Chapter 5777. The two of them charged towards Jun Lingxuan in a flash. However, when they got close, they were suddenly bounced back by an invisible force. When they realized this, everyone was shocked. They were not surprised that such a situation would occur before the illusion was broken. However, now that the illusion has been broken, why was this happening? This sudden turn of events stunned everyone present. This was completely different from the previous situation. How could this be? Lingo was puzzled. Countless thoughts flashed through Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. However, the most important thing now was to stop Jun Lingxuan. Jun Lingxuan, don't touch that ring. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Jun Lingxuan chuckled. He did not believe Bailey Hongzhuang's words at all. Don't try to lie to me. Only I've passed the test. This is my inheritance. If you want to take it away from me, there's no way. If Jun Lingxuan still had some doubts before, after seeing that everyone had been blocked, he gained a little more confidence. In the next moment, Jun Lingxuan's hand reached for the storage ring. No, Xiao Shou shouted. However, it was clearly too late. This was because Jun Lingxuan had already touched the ring. After picking up the ring, Jun Lingxuan sneered at everyone. Didn't you want to snatch this storage ring? Stop dreaming. This is my inheritance? Xiao Shou felt relieved after seeing that Jun Lingxuan was fine. She immediately glared at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Could it be that these guys had been lying to her earlier? Inheritance. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Wasn't it a romantic encounter? How could it be an inheritance? Jiang Wenyin nodded gently. The previous scene was indeed as you had described. However, there was a test after that. While I was undergoing the test, I felt a force, so I retreated and regained my consciousness. There's actually such a change? Linger was stunned. Had they guessed the beginning correctly, but not the end? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. According to their judgment, there shouldn't be any problems with what they had guessed before, but the situation that happened later was indeed unexpected. Jun Lingxuan sneered. Loser. Say Wu, you have been deceived by them. Xiao Shou quickly walked to Jun Lingxuan's side, her face full of disgust. I didn't expect their acting skills to be so good. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything else. Although the situation in front of her was indeed beyond her expectations, this kind of assessment was really too strange. Jun Lingxuan, since you've obtained the inheritance, you should know where the exit is, right? Di Beichun turned to look at Jun Lingxuan, only to see a smug look on the latter's face. Jun Lingxuan sneered. I know, but why should I tell you? The heavens are really blind. Xiaobai shook her head and sighed. Such a good opportunity had fallen into Jun Lingxuan's hands. This was too difficult to accept. Wenyin, I've affected you. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little apologetic. If she hadn't affected Jiang Wenyin, perhaps this inheritance would have belonged to Jiang Wenyin. Hearing this, Jiang Wenyin chuckled. If it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not meant to be, don't force it. What's more, your original intention was to save me. I don't think this thing belongs to me. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw this, their hearts were also slightly warm. Jiang Wenyin being able to say such words was really touching. Chapter 5778. A shrill scream was heard. Jun Lingxuan, who was originally proud of himself, suddenly widened his eyes, and his expression was extremely ferocious. The sudden change shocked everyone present. They looked at Jun Lingxuan in shock, not knowing what was going on. Jun Lingxuan clutched his head crazily, the veins on his handsome face bulging. His expression was extremely terrified, and he struggled in pain like a ghost. Lingxuan, what's wrong? Xiao Shou hurriedly grabbed Jun Lingxuan's arm, her delicate face full of panic. What happened? What's wrong with you? However, Jun Lingxuan could not answer at all. He could only struggle in pain. In just a short period of time, he could not even stand. He rolled on the ground in pain, and his expression was horrified and ferocious. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and their minds confirmed their previous guess. It seems that our judgment may not be wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichun with a trace of shock and horror. This powerful cultivator's methods are more brilliant than we thought, Di Beichun said in a low voice. As soon as he said this, Jiang Wenyin and the others completely understood. The other party had deliberately set up a trap. First, he used an illusion to directly lure everyone to take the ring. Then, perhaps because of the Sanctus Crystal's influence, he had no choice but to set up an illusion for the test. This way, they would think that the storage ring was an inheritance and would not have any scruples when picking it up. As for why Jun Lingxuan was fine when he picked up the ring, it was because his spiritual power had not seeped into the storage ring. Just now, he had done so, and the possession had begun. Although everyone knew about the possession, it was the first time they had seen a real possession. Once the other party had carried out the possession, unless a powerful cultivator appeared to wipe out the other party's soul, it was obvious that with their strength, they could not deal with a powerful cultivator from the immortal region. Even if this person had been dead for many years, the power of his soul was still very terrifying. Let's find a way to get out of here. Di Beichen's expression turned solemn. Perhaps they still had a chance to leave this place before the other party succeeded in seizing the body. However, if the other party succeeded in seizing the body, it would definitely take everyone's lives. Everything here was set up by this person. Under such circumstances, it was too difficult for them to deal with this person. As for Jun Lingxuan stopping the other party from possessing his body, no one even considered this point. It was impossible. He couldn't possibly succeed. After everyone heard Di Beichen's words, they didn't dare to delay any longer. They started to look around for a way to leave this place. Only Xiao So sat beside Jun Lingxuan in a panic. She looked at the latter's painful expression, but there was nothing she could do to help. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't you have the Holy Maiden Crystal? Quickly help Ling's son. Xiao So wiped away the tears on her face and rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang. She grabbed her arm tightly with both hands and looked frantic and anxious. Don't even think about running away. Quickly help him. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and flung Xiao So's hand away. Xiao So, we've already advised him, but he didn't listen. Have you forgotten how you acted just now? Now you have the nerve to ask me for help. Chapter 5779. After seeing Xiao So's unreasonable appearance, everyone sighed in their hearts. The thickness of this guy's skin was simply amazing. Just a moment ago, she and Jun Lingxuan were still sneering at them, and now she was asking them to do all kinds of things in a commanding tone. Wasn't this a joke? In a situation, outsiders can't save him at all. Aren't you also good at light power? Why don't you try it yourself? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiao So in disgust. If you want to leave here, find the exit, otherwise, wait to be buried with him. So, save me. Jun Lingxuan stretched out his hand and looked at Xiao So in pain. Xiao So quickly rushed to Jun Lingxuan's side. Jun Lingxuan, it will be fine. Get him out of your mind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked around and found that the situation was just as Linger said before. This was a dead end, and there was no way to leave at all. How can there be no way? Jiang Wenyin looked around in disbelief. Wherever they came to a place, there must be a way. How could there be nothing? This place is really strange. Di Beichen turned his eyes to look at Jun Lingxuan and found that the latter's struggle was getting weaker and weaker. He immediately said in a deep voice, "The other party is about to succeed in seizing the body. If we can't find the exit, it will be really troublesome. Damn it, we actually came to such a broken place." Bali Yin-che was annoyed. Judging from the current situation, there was only one person who knew the way to leave here, and that was the owner of this place. Obviously, the other party would not tell them. Xiren and the others wouldn't have encountered such a situation, right? That would be terrible. Bali Yin-che couldn't help but think of the situation of Xiren and Shangwan Yingying at that time. They all came here listening to the zither sound. I don't think so. Di Beichun shook his head. The test at the lake is very difficult. If the other party wanted to possess the body, they wouldn't need to spend so much effort. If the requirements are too high, most people won't be able to enter. Naturally, he won't have the chance to possess someone. Then why is it like this here? Linger was puzzled. One was at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, while the other was at the bottom of the lake. There should be some kind of connection between the two. If I'm not wrong, The owner of this place is just using the pavilion as an opportunity. Because the pavilion in the middle of the lake was very eye-catching, any cultivator who came here would definitely think of a way to enter the pavilion. He arranged everything under the lake so that when cultivators appear, they can be swept into this place. It's much more convenient than other places. There were quite a number of cultivators earlier as well. Why weren't they swept down? Jiang Wenyin asked doubtfully. This did not seem to make sense. Bailey Hongzhuang said, "That's because he has requirements for the host he chooses. If the cultivator's physical quality was too poor, it meant that it would be extremely difficult for him to use this body to raise his cultivation to a higher level. When that happened, he would inevitably have to look for a new body. However, if he could find a good body directly, he wouldn't need to spend so much effort." At this moment, Jun Lingxuan, who was struggling, suddenly stopped. A devilish smile suddenly appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 5780. TSK, you guys are pretty smart. You've already figured everything out in such a short time. Jun Lingxuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with a faint smile. Originally, I had my eyes on this body, but it's a pity that even such a woman can't charm you. Following Jun Lingxuan's gaze, everyone realized that the person he had his eyes on was Di Beichen. Di Beichen's expression was slightly cold. Possession was something worse than death. At this moment, everyone understood that Jun Lingxuan was already dead. Even if the person in front of them looked exactly like Jun Lingxuan, he was not the real Jun Lingxuan. Xiao Sou stared blankly at the familiar, yet unfamiliar man in front of her. His appearance was still the same as before, and there was no change at all. However, his gaze and demeanor were slightly different. Most importantly, the way he looked at her was no longer as friendly and familiar as before. Her Jun Lingxuan was gone. His soul had been wiped out by this despicable guy in front of her. "No!" Xiao Sou screamed at the top of her lungs. She fell into paranoia and madness. She pulled Jun Lingxuan's clothes and shook him hysterically. "You despicable guy!" quickly returned Jun Lingxuan. Jun Lingxuan only glanced coldly at Xiao Sou and casually threw her aside. Bang! Xiao Sou's body fell heavily onto the wall and then slid down. Uffed! Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Xiao Sou's expression collapsed and sorrowful. It was not easy for her and Jun Lingxuan's hearts to be connected, but now something like this happened. It was really hard for her to accept. Why was her life so bitter? She regretted it so much. Why didn't she see through everything earlier like Bailey Hongzhuang? Originally, she still had a chance to save everything, but she didn't think about it carefully at all, so she missed the best opportunity. If she had resolutely told Jun Lingxuan to give up instead of coveting such a reward, then this wouldn't have happened. And now, Jun Lingxuan was no longer the original Jun Lingxuan. If he used Jun Lingxuan's identity to do something out of line, what should she do? Jun Lingxuan stood up, shook his head, and stretched his body. A few cracking sounds could be heard, and then a happy smile appeared on his face. Although I didn't get the skin I wanted the most, this one isn't bad either. It's been a long time since I've experienced this feeling. The feeling of being able to move freely is wonderful. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the guy in front of them cautiously. This guy didn't look like a good person at first glance. His way of doing things was strange. "Congratulations, Senior." Di Beichen cupped his hands and probed. "We promise that we won't spread this matter. We hope that Senior will be magnanimous and let us live." Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at Jun Lingxuan with fear. Although the possibility was small, they still had to give it a try. Hearing this, Jun Lingxuan raised his eyebrows, and his gaze swept over Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "Do you think I'm afraid of you spreading the matter of me possessing your body? Who do you think you are?" Jun Lingxuan's face turned cold, and his eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty, killing intent. "You tried to stop me from possessing your body in every way possible, and now you still want to leave here alive." His cold voice carried a boundless chill, making people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Chapter 5781. At this moment, everyone's hearts sank. It seemed that the other party had made up his mind and would not let them go. If they could not find a way to leave this place, death would be the only way out for them. Quick, think of a way to leave. Everyone could not help but take a few steps back. They were afraid that the other party would attack soon. Leave. Jun Lingshuan chuckled. Haven't you already looked for an exit? You can't find the exit at all. You'll all die here. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Lingshuan immediately attacked everyone. A tyrannical aura could be felt, causing everyone's blood to surge. After the man had taken over Jun Lingshuan's body, his cultivation level was only at the Radiant Moon stage. However, the power of his soul was extremely terrifying. Just by sensing the power of his soul, everyone understood that they were no match for him. This person's power was simply too terrifying. How powerful were the cultivators of the ancient battlefield? Even so, everyone had died here and their souls had dissipated into nothingness. This person was able to maintain his soul's integrity in such an environment and was not destroyed even after so many years. His power must have been extremely terrifying when he was alive. Although he was restricted by Jun Lingshuan's body and could not unleash his full power, his future achievements would definitely be extremely terrifying if he was given some time. At this moment, everyone was not only worried about their own safety. They were even more worried about what kind of changes Jun Lingshuan would bring to the upper realm if he were to leave this place. What would happen to the D family, the Lin family, and the Bailey family? It would be fine if he were to live his own life. However, if he were to return to the Jun family, it would be a huge disaster. Bang! Di Baichen and Bai Li Yanxie were defeated in a single blow. Their opponent's spiritual power was too terrifying. Under such pressure, they could not unleash their powers at all. Are we all going to die here? Ling Er revealed her true form and attacked Jun Lingshuan with her dragon tail. Jun Lingshuan grabbed the dragon tail with a disdainful look in his eyes. The Dragon Clan is indeed not bad. However, after becoming a contract beast, your powers are nothing much. In the blink of an eye, everyone was severely injured. Don't struggle anymore. Isn't it better to die here quietly? If I hadn't brought you here, you would have died already. Jun Lingshuan chuckled. Who are you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked coldly. He chuckled and looked around casually. His face was full of joy. Since you're going to die anyway, I'll tell you. Remember my name, Qing Devil. Qing Devil. After hearing this name, everyone looked at the man in front of them. Devil, indeed, was somewhat compatible with his appearance. From now on, Jun Lingshuan doesn't exist anymore. Qing Devil laughed. So do you? Bailey Hongzhuang took out the Saintess crystal and injected all her energy into it. At this moment, there was no other way. Most importantly, there was a layer of mysterious restriction in this strange place. She could not bring everyone into the Chaos Ring. She could take out the items, but she could not leave. Bailey Hongzhuang could not figure it out. The situation gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if she was about to figure out something. Chapter 5782. This thing is not bad. The next moment, Qing Devil stretched out his hand, intending to grab the Saintess crystal directly. Bailey Hongzhuang held the Saintess crystal tightly. This thing was very important to her, and she couldn't allow it to be taken away by others. However, she also knew that it was too difficult for her to stop Qing Devil with her current strength. However, the situation was a little unexpected. After Qing Devil made his move, the Saintess crystal suddenly gave out a ray of light, which prevented him from taking the thing away. What? Qing Devil uttered in surprise. At the same time, another ray of dazzling light flashed, with a hint of cyan vaguely in this ray. Then, everyone felt that their injuries were healing rapidly under this ray of light. They were seriously injured in the lake. Except for Jun Lingshuan, Xiao Sou, and Jiang Wenyan, the others had only regained their ability to move, but their injuries were still not fully healed. Under the influence of this power, they found that their injuries were healing rapidly. Bailey Hongzhuang was pleasantly surprised. She had always known that the Saintess crystal had healing effects, but but she hadn't been able to master the method after studying it for such a long time. She didn't expect that she would find the method to use it in such a critical situation today. After Di Beichen and the others recovered from their injuries, their combat strength also improved a lot. Before, their injuries were healed, and their opponents were much stronger than them, so they were no match for them at all. Now their injuries were healed. Although the gap between them was still obvious, they were better off now. "It's useless," Qing Devil said coldly. "As long as you die, this thing will still fall into my hands." Qing Devil didn't turn his eyes, but he noticed that everyone was determined to fight to the death. He shook his head and said, "You really won't give up until all hope is gone? Then I'll send you to hell." As soon as he finished his words, Qing Devil suddenly attacked with his right hand. His first target was Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing this, Di Beichun rushed up quickly and stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Qing Devil snorted, "You really love each other, but you can only be lovers in hell." Bang, bang, bang. Di Beichun faced the Qing Devil head-on. Even though Jun Lingxuan had just broken through to the Radiant Moon tier, the strength that the Qing Devil displayed was far greater than that. Bai Lian Che and the others didn't hesitate either. If they didn't try their best to stall the Qing Devil, they would all die here once they were defeated one by one. While attacking Qing Devil, Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about how to get out of here. It was too difficult to defeat the Qing Devil together. Running away was the only way to survive. Boom! Qing Devil's power suddenly exploded. His mind power spread out, and everyone was sent flying. Bang, bang. One by one, the figures smashed into the wall and fell to the ground, heavily injured. "Idiot!" Qing Devil looked down at them condescendingly and stretched his body. "I'll give you a quick death. If you don't want it, I can only let you know what pain is." In the next moment, Qing Devil stretched out his hand and grasped Bailey Hongzhuang's neck with an invisible force. "Let me go!" Bailey Hongzhuang was suspended in the air. No matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't get rid of the force at all. Di Beichen rushed up quickly, but he couldn't touch the force at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang struggling in pain, his heart was bleeding. Chapter 5783. At this moment, Di Beichen recalled the scene when he was practicing his sword on the river. He thought of Zhongli Mu's indomitable and boundless sword qi. He suddenly waved the sharp sword in his hand and gathered all his strength at the tip of the sword. He put aside all distracting thoughts and focused all his energy on the sharp sword. Almost at this moment, everyone was acutely aware that Di Beichen's energy had reached an unprecedented peak. Even Qing Devil, who had never taken Di Beichen seriously, couldn't help but change his expression at this moment, because he felt a sense of threat from this sword. How could this be? From Jun Lingxuan's soul, Qing Devil knew that these people were from the upper world, and this kind of sword qi should only appear in the immortal realm. How could the man in front of him reach such a level without any teacher? Swoosh! A bright and dazzling sword qi shot out from the tip of Di Beichen's sword. Even though they were far away, everyone could feel the terrifying sword qi. It was extremely sharp and indomitable. Even though the sharp sword wasn't pointed at them, they felt that their skin was about to split under the influence of the sword qi. Bai Lian Che and the others looked at Di Beichen in amazement. They didn't expect Di Beichen to be able to use such a sword move. This kind of momentum and power, even though it was not as powerful as Zhongli Mu's, was still outstanding. Qing Devil had to dodge the sword qi, so he loosened his control over Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang fell to the ground, gasping for breath. If it wasn't for Beichen's help, she really wouldn't have been able to keep her life. When she looked up again, she found a wound on Qing Devil's face. Blood was flowing out from the wound, and his expression became more and more sinister. "I didn't expect you to be so powerful that you could hurt me." Qing Devil looked at Di Beichen coldly. "I never show mercy to those who hurt my face. You're dead meat." His pitch-black eyes filled with endless killing intent and threat. Azure Demon's figure flashed, rushing towards Bailey Hongzhuang. This kind of killing intent was far stronger than before. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were also in a panic. They all picked up their swords and tried to use the swordsmanship that they had been practicing for a while. Although it was only one move, it was extremely powerful. After Jiang Wenyin saw Di Bei Chun display that move, his heart was full of shock. If this move was aimed at him, then he would not be able to avoid it at all. What he did not expect was that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had actually learned this trick. This was too unexpected. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were practicing together. The Azure Demon naturally did not dare to be so careless after suffering once. He would not be able to accept it if his face was hurt again. Then they found that their bodies were confined by a powerful force, and they couldn't move at all. Qing Devil grabbed Di Beichen's neck tightly. His gloomy eyes were like glaciers in the North Pole. "I want you to die miserably." Di Beichen tried his best to resist. His opponent's spiritual strength was too terrifying. He felt that the Azure Demon was probably in existence on the same level as Senior Yu. The moment Di Beichen was controlled, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart tightened. An indescribable fear spread in her heart. This feeling was even more terrifying than when she was facing death. She couldn't accept Di Beichen dying in front of her. Chapter 5784. I can't die here. This thought kept echoing in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Get out of here. The only way is to get out of here. Everyone attacked Qing Devil. Even if they knew that they couldn't change the outcome, they had to do it. The atmosphere became tragic. Everyone was ready to risk their lives. They didn't want to be born in the same year and month, but they wanted to die in the same year and month. It was not the worst ending if they could die here together. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang flew backward again and spat out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. Her pretty face was as pale as a piece of paper. The despair from the bottom of her heart made her collapse. The people in front of her were the people she cherished the most. Were they all going to die here today? She couldn't help but look at the chaos ring in her hand. Why couldn't it bring them in this time? Why? Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on the red zither in front of her. Something seemed to break in her mind. She suddenly found a way to solve the problem that she couldn't figure out. That's right. That's the problem. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She finally understood everything. It wasn't that the chaos ring lost its effect, but that she was in the dreamland now. They had been in the dreamland since they entered here. It wasn't just one dreamland. It was the overlapping of many dreamlands. Until now, they were still in the dreamland and hadn't really gone out. That was why the chaos ring didn't respond. The zither was the most likely to break the dreamland, because it was the sound of the zither that attracted them here. No matter how real the dreamland was, there would be a way to break it. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang dragged her seriously injured body and rushed to the zither when Qing Devil wasn't paying attention to her. After noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's movement, Qing Devil became anxious. He rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang directly, leaving Di Beichen and the others behind. At the same time, Di Beichen and the others finally noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. For a moment, they didn't even understand the use of the zither. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel the terrifying attack behind her, but she didn't turn around to look, even if the attack was about to land on her. There was only one thought in her mind, and that was to smash this zither. Only by smashing the zither would they be able to leave this huge illusion. Even if she died, it was still good that someone was still alive. Crack! With a crisp sound, the zither fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Almost at the same time that the zither was broken, everyone felt that the surrounding environment was rapidly collapsing. It was no longer the same as before. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes, as if she had already accepted her fate. The sky was blue, and white clouds floated in the sky. Bailey Hongzhuang did not feel the terrifying attack. Instead, she fell into a warm embrace. It was Di Beichen. Just from that familiar aura, she knew that it was Di Beichen. Oh my God, am I hallucinating? We're out. Jiang Wenyin looked at the strange and wonderful environment around him in shock. This sudden change made him feel incredulous. 1 second ago, they were still in the shadow of death. How could they be safe now? Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. Looking at the blue sky, white clouds, and green grass in front of her, she had never felt so happy before. Chapter 5785. Honey, we're all right. Baichin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. His handsome face was full of tenderness. You saved all of us. Bai Yin Che and the others came forward. At this moment, everyone was immersed in the joy of surviving a disaster. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't broken the zither at the last moment, they would have gone to the netherworld. It's really hard to imagine. I thought I was going to die. Jiang Wenyin couldn't hide the surprise on his face. What happened today was really unbelievable. Hongzhuang, you saved me twice. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't stopped him with the help of the Saint's crystal, he probably wouldn't have been able to resist the temptation of the storage ring. Once he touched it, he would be the one who was possessed. Thinking back, he felt that it was really terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Fortunately, my judgment was right. Otherwise, I would inevitably feel guilty. Jiang Wenyin waved his hand. I really owe it to you this time. Speaking of which, you are really amazing. You can even make such a judgment. If Jun Lingxuan didn't believe you, he wouldn't be in such a situation now. Hearing this, everyone shook their heads and sighed. Jun Lingxuan had always been their enemy. They originally wanted to find an opportunity to kill him. However, they didn't expect that Jun Lingxuan would disappear in such a way. Sister, how did you think of breaking the zither to save us? Until now, Bai Yin Che was still a little confused. He didn't understand what had happened before. Everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. They were also very curious about this. In fact, when the Qing devil appeared, I always felt that there was something wrong that we ignored. At the critical moment, I knew that there was only one way to survive, and that was to leave here. I thought that the Qing devil was just a soul, but the place where we were was extremely beautiful. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a soul to do this. In addition, we've seen that beauty before, but then that beauty appeared in your illusion. This doesn't make sense in itself. The only explanation was that we were already in an illusion from the moment we entered the sleeping chamber, and the illusion that appeared after that was the superposition of several illusions. The Qing devil is really good at illusions. Even with the Saint's crystal, I was still troubled for such a long time. After listening to the explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on. This kind of illusion technique really made people gasp in amazement and was too shocking. Now that I've figured it out, I feel that I was too stupid before. How could I not figure out such a simple thing? Qing devil is really too clever. Jiang Wenyin sighed. His opponent's methods were truly impossible to guard against. Because it was too real, he never thought that he had entered an illusion from the very beginning. No matter what, we managed to keep our lives. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile. Although they had experienced a lot of risks, their lives were saved in the end. If they hadn't experienced this, perhaps they wouldn't have been able to return to the shore at the bottom of the lake. Overall, they had escaped danger. Master, why is Xiao Soa missing? Xiao He suddenly asked in confusion. Chapter 5786. Previously, everyone was immersed in joy. Besides, Xiao Soa was not their friend, so they did not notice her disappearance. Now that Xiao He mentioned it, they realized that Xiao Soa did not come out with them. Logically speaking, everyone should have come out when the illusion is broken. Why didn't Xiao Soa come out? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. She did not have a good impression of Xiao Soa. It was not a bad thing for her to disappear. However, the current situation was indeed unexpected. Before I left, I heard Xiao Soa scream, but I didn't take it to heart. Did Nan Wei fail to escape at the last moment? Linger asked. That's possible. At that time, Xiao Soa was the closest to Qing devil, Bai Yin Che said thoughtfully. Forget it. Anyway, even if Xiao Soa comes out alive, she can't escape death. Why should we care? Baichin looked calm. The conflict between them and Xiao Soa and Jun Lingxuan was getting worse and worse. It had already reached the point where only one of them could survive. Although the incident this time was somewhat out of their expectations, it was undeniable that the two of them had completely disappeared. Why didn't Qing devil come out? Xiao Obai was a little confused. Since it was an illusion, they might be together after it was broken. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. I don't know, but I think this illusion should be very important to him. When I threw the zither, he looked very nervous. Maybe he was also affected by the destruction of the illusion. That's why he didn't come out. Regarding this, no one asked any more questions. The Azure Fiend's illusions were beyond their reach. It would be impossible for them to find out the reason behind it. Now that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou are no longer a threat, a more difficult Qing devil has appeared. I don't think the situation is optimistic. Bai Lianche said in a low voice with a hint of worry on his handsome face. Just by looking at Qing Devil's appearance, one could tell that this guy was definitely not a low-key person. Azure Demon. Just based on this name alone, he probably wasn't a nobody in the Immortal region. If he went to the Immortal realm, he would definitely turn the situation upside down. Hearing Bai Lianche's words, everyone's heart sank. This was the problem they were most worried about now. Qing Devil must be very angry that they escaped this time. If they met again, he would try his best to kill them. They escaped this time because the illusion was destroyed. But if they met him again, it would be very difficult for them to escape. In fact, Qing Devil's strength is not very strong now. After all, he has just occupied Jun Lingxuan's body and needs some time to adapt. What's more, although his soul strength is powerful, his cultivation is based on Jun Lingxuan's cultivation. It would be great if someone could kill Azure Demon at this moment. Ling Er's pretty face had a trace of alienation and indifference, as usual. Once he develops, it will be really troublesome. Now we don't know where Qing Devil is. The only thing we can do is to pray that he will die soon. Jiang Wenyan shrugged helplessly. Just the thought of facing the Azure Demon again made him feel uncomfortable all over. Forget it. Let's take one step at a time. Di Beichan waved his hand to let everyone relax. Chapter 5787. Everyone was exhausted from the previous exchange of blows. Sitting on the green grass, the warm sunlight shone on their bodies, dispelling the cold from before. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the holy maiden crystal. In the previous critical moment, she had accidentally discovered the method to use the holy maiden crystal's healing ability. She finally understood why she had not succeeded before. First, it was because there was no one around her who was injured when she tried, and second, it was because she needed to chant to resonate with the holy maiden crystal. Previously, when she had used the power of light to awaken everyone from the illusion, she had used the chant to amplify the effects of the power of light. At this time, she found that there was a connection between herself and the holy maiden crystal that was not there before. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang began to chant. After everyone heard the chant, they all turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and immediately found that a rich light energy had wrapped around everyone. The faint green light entered everyone's body, causing their injuries to heal quickly. They had already experienced this feeling once, but when they experienced it again, they could not help but feel that it was magical. The Holy Maiden Crystal is really worthy of being a sacred object of the Holy Assembly. This healing ability is really amazing. Even pills cannot compare to it. Jiang Wenyan looked at the dazzling Holy Maiden Crystal in amazement. Hongzhuang, you really are the real Holy Maiden of Light. I heard that the Holy Assembly had tried many methods in the past, but they were still unable to stimulate the healing ability of the Holy Maiden Crystal. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, and her beautiful face became even more beautiful. I have also studied it for a long time, but I have not been able to figure it out. This time, it could be considered a blessing in disguise. Sister, now that we have the Holy Maiden Crystal, we do not need to waste time healing. Bali Yin Che smiled brightly, his smile as bright as the moon. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. There are many benefits to following me. With their injuries healed, everyone's spirits were also lifted, and they stood up one by one to continue on their journey. It is best for us to meet up with everyone as soon as possible and tell everyone about Jun Lingxuan, so that everyone could be mentally prepared. Di Beichan's expression was solemn. With the enmity between them, if the practitioners of the Di family and the Lin family saw Jun Lingxuan alone, they might take the opportunity to attack him. However, with Qing Devil's means, the disciples of the family were no match for him. Therefore, they had to tell everyone as soon as possible. They could not let everyone die. Everyone nodded. This was indeed the most urgent matter. It wasn't easy to reunite with everyone, but now we're separated again in the blink of an eye. Bailey Yinshe smiled helplessly. But at least we're together. Everyone will be surprised when they see us. When we suddenly disappeared, everyone probably thought we're dead. Now that we reappear, it will indeed be surprising. Jiang Wenyin chuckled. It is quite interesting to think about it. Ling saw that Bailey Yinshe and Jiang Wenyin were in a good mood and felt a little helpless. The two of you are really open-minded. We don't even know where we are right now. It'll be even harder for us to meet up with everyone. Linger, this depends on Wenyin. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Jiang Wenyin mysteriously. Jiang Wenyin's smile was tinged with a trace of complacency, and he nodded. Chapter 5788. At times like this, we need a map. Jiang Wenyin smiled proudly. Di Beichen was shocked. You have a map of the ancient battlefield? How is that possible? Bali Yinshe was dumbfounded. It was the first time that the ancient battlefield had appeared in the upper realm. Logically speaking, no one should know the layout of the environment, let alone have a precise map. I was lucky to get by chance. Jiang Wenyin took out the map. However, the map only shows the general situation. We need to know more about the surroundings before we can determine where we are. Di Beichen took the map and looked at it carefully. He noticed that the pavilion in the middle of the lake was marked on the map. He was even more surprised. It really is a map of the ancient battlefield. Do you think I would lie to you? Jiang Wenyin chuckled. We are now on the grassland. There are no obvious features around us, so we need to continue to move forward to determine our location. It's much easier with this map. Let's go. Di Beichen relaxed a lot. In the huge, ancient battlefield, they were like headless flies when they didn't know where they were. However, everything was much easier with a map. As the primordial battlefield was just too big, they only confirmed their location after walking for a day and a night. Jiang Wenyin looked at the map in his hand and said, We are now quite a distance away from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I'm afraid it will take some time to walk back. Most importantly, I feel that even if we return to the pavilion in the middle of the lake now, everyone won't be there anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. They'd spent a lot of time healing their injuries. Moreover, the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake had fallen into the hands of Xiren and Yingying. At that time, she noticed that after Xiren and Yingying arrived at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the zither music had disappeared. As such, it was even more impossible for the other cultivators to go to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Since that's the case, let's go to the nearest marked spot on the map. Bailey Hongzhuang said. She had seen the map and knew that there were other marked places besides the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Obviously, these places were very special. Jiang Wenyin looked at the map in his hand and said, This is the closest place to us at the moment. But are these red stones drawn on the map? Di Beichen also looked at the mark on the map. It is indeed a red stone. Could it be that this stone is a treasure? Red stone. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She quickly walked to Di Beichen's side. Her eyes lit up when she saw the red stone on the map. She was no stranger to it. I think this red stone might be something special there, just like the pavilion in the middle of the lake. We'll know when we get there. Bali Yinshe looked indifferent. After seeing the situation of the pavilion in the middle of the lake, he felt that there were treasures here, but it was extremely difficult to obtain them. Does it look like this? Bailey Hongzhuang took out a red spirit stone and showed it to everyone. Everyone was attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang's voice. After noticing the item in her hand, everyone was stunned. Chapter 5789. Hongzhuang, what's that in your hand? Jiang Wenyin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. He was the first to meet up with Bailey Hongzhuang. This was not something that they had seen together. This is the only thing I've found. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Earlier, after I left the fog, I kept moving forward. Later on, I saw this redstone somewhere. There were quite a few of them. I realized that other than the difference in color, these things are even more powerful than high-grade spirit stones. So, Xiaohei and I collected all the blood spirit stones we saw. With a wave of her hand, Bailey Hongzhuang tossed a blood spirit stone to each of them. She smiled and said, "Take a look. What do you think?" Everyone held the blood spirit stone. The fiery red color reflected a dazzling light under the sunlight. It was as magnificent as a gemstone and extremely beautiful. Under the beautiful color, it contained an incomparably pure energy. After sensing this, everyone couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. To them, the effects of high-grade spirit stones were already extremely good. It was just that high-grade spirit stones were too few in number. They couldn't always use high-grade spirit stones for cultivation. However, the energy in the blood spirit stone in front of them was even purer and denser than that of high-grade spirit stones. If they could use the blood spirit stone to cultivate, their cultivation speed would definitely be even faster. "This is a blood spirit stone." Ling Er, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at her. Ling was the only one among them who knew about the immortal region. However, because her memories had been sealed, there were many things that she could not recall. However, she seemed to remember this blood spirit stone. Blood spirit stones are of a higher grade than high-grade spirit stones. They are very helpful to cultivators. Ling did not continue speaking. According to her vague impression, the cultivators of the immortal region seemed to use them for cultivation. After receiving Ling Er's affirmation, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely relieved. Although the color of this spirit stone was a little flirtatious, it was indeed a first-class treasure. Then let's not hesitate anymore. Let's hurry over there. If we're late, we might lose the treasure, Xiaohei quickly said. As a money grubber, she was the most anxious at this moment. Although he and his master had picked up some earlier, there was no such thing as too much good stuff. Seeing Xiaohei's anxious look, everyone could not help but chuckle, but their footsteps unconsciously quickened. No one was willing to miss out on such a cultivation resource. "Master, if Qing Devil really used Jun Lingshuan's body to return to the Jun family and took the opportunity to deal with the Di family, is it possible for us to ask Granny Hua for help?" Xiaohei asked with concern. Even it could imagine how troublesome the situation was. At that time, if they really couldn't suppress it, perhaps only the people from the immortal realm would be able to stop all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyelids drooped slightly, and her eyes sank into darkness. She fell silent for a moment, then said, "I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult." Di Baichen nodded. "According to our daily interactions, Granny Hua and the others take great care of us. However, based on their character of staying in the abandoned immortal forest, they probably don't want to care about other things. They don't want to get involved too much in the affairs of the immortal region. They only want to live a carefree life, not to mention coming to the upper realm to help solve problems." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen. On this point, she and Di Baichen had the same opinion. Previously, when Granny Hua told her about some mysterious things, she knew that Granny Hua's way of thinking was very open-minded. It was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Chapter 5790. Even though they didn't want this to happen, sometimes fate couldn't be changed. Perhaps it was God's arrangement. Many times, an upheaval or catastrophe would cause chaos in the world, and people would be plunged into misery and suffering. However, the whole continent could also become stronger after such a catastrophe. Before such a thing happened, no one knew whether the final result would be good or bad. She had heard about such a situation from her mother-in-law before. At that time, she was very shocked. However, when she thought about it carefully, she couldn't deny that there was something wrong with it. "Don't worry so much. Perhaps the situation isn't that bad." Di Baichen smiled warmly, and the haze in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes instantly dispersed. "Although Qing Devil is great, he was defeated by me before and has stayed on the ancient battlefield for many years. Luck may not always be on his side. We'll find a solution." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After experiencing the incident at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, she felt that there was always a way out. You may feel that you are at a dead end now, but you will never know if other possibilities will appear until the last moment. Therefore, you must never give up. Everyone quickly rushed towards a location marked with the Blood Spirit Stone. Although the distance marked on the map wasn't very far, it was still far away. After rushing for several days, they still hadn't arrived. The ancient battlefield is really terrifying. It's a pity that we didn't get any information about the ancient battlefield from Qing Devil. Bai Li Yin Che sighed. Ling glanced at Bai Li Yin Che. In that situation, everyone wanted to survive. Who will want to know more? Di Beichun? Suddenly, a voice full of surprise was heard. Di Beichun turned his head to the right and saw Murong Jing and the cultivators from his family walking toward them. It's really you. After confirming that he wasn't mistaken, Murong Jing sped up and rushed over. His face was filled with disbelief and joy. Murong. Di Beichun also showed a comfortable smile. Although Murong Jing was his elder brother's best friend, their relationship was also very good after several contacts. It's great to see you all. Murong Jing's gaze swept over Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Then he hugged Di Beichun and said, I've heard people say that you've fallen at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. I've been sad for a long time because I always felt that with your strength, this shouldn't have happened. Now it seems that I was right. You guys are really lucky. Di Beichun could feel Murong Jing's heartfelt joy, and his heart felt very warm. We were lucky. Otherwise, we would have lost our lives. Murong Jing then looked at Jiang Wenyin. Wenyin, you're really hanging out with Beichun and the rest now. Of course. Jiang Wenyin raised his eyebrows. If you're interested, you can join us. You're really calm. Murong Jing chuckled. You don't know how sad your family was when they found out about your accident. You'd better find your team as soon as possible so that they can rest assured. Chapter 5791. Looking at Jiang Wenyin's helpless look, Murong Jing chuckled. It seems that the place you came from is really deserted. However, this also proves that we are fated to meet. Indeed. Jiang Wenyin nodded. It's good to meet you. Murong, have you seen my big brother? Di Beichun asked. He had seen many cultivators when he was at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. However, he had not heard any news about his big brother until now. He did not know how his big brother was doing. No. Murong Jing shook his head. Murong Jing shook his head. I met Lin Taxing a few days ago. The cultivators of your family were with him. I also asked him about Xiaofeng, but so far, no one seems to have seen him. Hearing this, Di Beichun frowned slightly. It had been a while since they entered the ancient battlefield. Although the area was very large, most of the cultivators had already met each other. It was really strange that there was no news about his big brother for so long. Noticing Di Beichun's worried look, Murong Jing comforted him. Don't think too much. Xiaofeng will be fine. The area here is too large. Maybe he had some fortuitous encounter. I hope so. The haze in Di Beichun's eyes dissipated. He was also very confident in his big brother's ability. Now that Jun Lingxuan had fallen and Xiao Sou had died, there should be no problem if there were no accidents. Murong, I have to tell you a piece of shocking news. What news? Murong Jing raised his eyebrows. Apart from your safe return, what other news can surprise me? Jun Lingxuan has been possessed. As soon as these words came out, Murong Jing and the cultivators behind him were all stunned. Their mouths were wide open as they looked at Di Beichun in disbelief. This news was really too shocking. Di Beichun, did I hear wrong? Murong Jing was dumbfounded. He has been possessed. Who has possessed him? I seem to have heard that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou disappeared with you. It seems that something terrible has happened. The possessor is called Qing Devil. He is extremely powerful. He must have been trapped in the ancient battlefield for a long time and is good at illusions. Originally, he intended to kill all of us, but fortunately, Hongzhuang broke his illusion at the last moment and escaped. That's right. That fellow's strength is truly terrifying. We feel that we should inform everyone of this news as soon as possible. We must be careful if we encounter him, Jiang Wenyin added. Murong Jing remained in a daze for a long time after hearing everyone's words. Possession, this was something they all knew, But in reality, the probability of it happening was not high. The same body, but a different soul. Just the thought of it was enough to make one's hair stand on end. If this didn't come from your mouths, but from someone else, I definitely wouldn't believe it. Morong Jing sighed. He did not have a good impression of Jun Lingxuan, but it was too hard to accept that he had ended up like this. Let alone you. Even we find it hard to believe. However, it happened right in front of our eyes. Did Xiao So escape? Did you kill her, or let her go? Murong Jing asked doubtfully. Bailey Hongzhuang spread her hands. This is very strange. After breaking the illusion, all of us left except for Xiao So. Perhaps she was captured by Qing Devil. Chapter 5792. According to what you said, the Qing Devil is so powerful and has taken over Jun Lingxuan's body. Won't it be troublesome if he uses Jun Lingxuan's identity to stir up trouble? Murong Jing quickly thought of the trouble. This was not just a family's disaster, but the entire upper realm's trouble. That's what we're most worried about now, but we don't have a solution for now, Bali Yin Che said helplessly. We don't even know where he is now. We'll have to be careful if we meet him again. Murong Jing's face darkened. The other party would definitely not let Di Beichen and the others off. If he deliberately hid it, coupled with the power of the Jun family and the Xiao family, it would be really troublesome. Di Beichen nodded slightly. We can only take one step at a time. I hope we can improve our cultivation as soon as possible. I think it's difficult. Murong Jing shook his head and sighed. This ancient battlefield is really strange. Along the way, apart from hearing that Xiren and Yingying obtained the inheritance of the pavilion in the middle of the lake, I didn't hear about anyone else's gains. This place is so big. We might end up with nothing when we get out. Murong Jing was not the only one. The cultivators of the Murong family also looked dejected. It was not easy to come out and gain experience. If they did not gain anything, they might as well stay in the family and cultivate. Di Beichun smiled faintly. Let's go. I'll take you to a good place. Murong Jing was surprised. What good place? Why are you asking so many questions? You'll know when we get there. Jiang Wenyin smiled proudly. Murong Jing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other's secretive looks and could not help but feel even more curious. However, he also knew that Di Beichen and the others would not lie to him. Since they said it was a good place, there must be something to look forward to. The cultivators of the Murong family followed closely behind Murong Jing. Since they were walking aimlessly, it was naturally better to have someone to guide them. Di Beichen and the others walked in the direction indicated on the map. They had been on the road for a few days, and now they were much closer. After another 3 days, they stopped when they saw the iconic tree in front of them. That's right. This should be the place. Di Beichen stopped and turned to look at Jiang Wenyin. Jiang Wenyin nodded slightly. He had the same idea as Di Beichen. Murong Jing looked at Di Beichen and Jiang Wenyin's determined appearance, and then looked around. This was a completely open space. There was nothing here. What kind of good place was this? Stop keeping us in suspense. What's so special about this place? This was also based on what Bailey Hongzhuang had said earlier. This place was flat ground. Other than being underground, they could not think of any other possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not doubt the situation on the map. They used their mental power to check the ground. However, after a quick inspection, everyone discovered something different. This place is so strange. It's difficult to use mental power to penetrate the ground, Bali Yin Che said in surprise. Chapter 5793. Now that they were standing on this piece of land, their mental power could only reach a depth of about 2 meters. They could not see anything further. This was too strange. There's something strange about this place. Murong Jing looked surprised. If he had some doubts before, he was now certain. Since there was something strange about this place, there must be some treasure in this place. Otherwise, such a strange situation would not occur. After everyone tried and found that the situation was similar, Ling said, "It seems that we can only dig." Bali Yin Che was stunned. This place was so big that no one knew where the blood spirit stone was. Although there were many of them here, It would be troublesome if they had to dig one by one. Other than this, can you think of any other way? Linger asked. Bai Yin Che shook his head. Other than this seemingly stupid method, he could not think of any other way. Everyone looked at each other and could only start digging. However, with their status, they would not normally put digging tools in their storage rings. Hence, the scene became very interesting. Everyone did not dig randomly. Instead, they dug 3 feet into the ground. However, after digging a large hole, they helplessly found that they did not find anything. It can't be that there's nothing here, right? Xiao Hei could not help but ask. Everyone had been digging for so long. In any case, there should be a consolation prize, right? If there was nothing, it would be too depressing. It can't be. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. According to their judgment, this map could not be fake. The situation marked on it could not be wrong. Could it be that we're using the wrong method? Bai Yin Che asked. Why don't we each try our luck and find a place to dig? Everyone looked at each other. At this time, they might really have to try their luck. I really don't understand. What are you trying to dig here? Murong Jing led his people and dug here for half a day. Until now, he still did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were trying to dig here. Wife. Di Beichun turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood and threw a blood spirit stone at him. Di Beichun raised his hand to catch the blood spirit stone and handed it to Murong Jing. This is what we want to dig up. Murong Jing looked at the blood spirit stone in his hand. This was the first time he had seen such a thing. However, after sensing it carefully, he discovered that this thing was different from the rest. What a rich origin chi. Is this a spirit stone? Murong Jing asked in surprise. Di Beichun nodded. That's right, this is a blood spirit stone. Its value is even higher than a high-grade spirit stone. You're saying that there are blood spirit stones underground. That should be the case. However, it seems that obtaining this blood spirit stone won't be easy. Di Beichun spread out his hands. He hadn't expected such a situation. If it was said that Murong Jing had a lazy attitude when he was digging earlier, then at this moment, it was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. A high-grade spirit stone was already an extremely precious cultivation resource. Now that a blood spirit stone, which was even more precious than a high-grade spirit stone, had appeared, how could he miss the opportunity in front of him? Chapter 5794. They had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so long, but had not gained anything. They did not even have a target. Now, they had finally found their target. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to dig up this treasure. This was a real reward. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but laugh when they noticed the changes in Murong Jing's group. Sure enough, they would only work hard when they saw the benefits. Murong Jing felt a little embarrassed when he noticed everyone's gaze. He smiled sheepishly and said, If you had told me earlier, wouldn't I have put in more effort? Ha, don't try to hide it. We've seen through you. Jiang Wenyin sneered without giving him any face. Everyone found a place to start digging. However, the result was still very frustrating. After digging for a long time, they did not find any trace of the blood spirit stone. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang could not understand. If there really was a blood spirit stone here, with so many of them digging, one of them should have found it, right? How could they not have found anything? Di Beichun also stopped digging. This situation might be a little different from what they had predicted. If they did not understand this point, they were afraid that no matter how long they dug, it would be useless. Wife, what was the situation when you found the blood spirit stone? Tell me more about it. As Di Beichun spoke, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. They were also curious about the situation. When I found the blood spirit stone, it was very easy. It was exposed on the ground, and part of it was buried under the ground. Xiao Hei and I just dug up a little and picked it up. The environment here is different from the ancient battlefield. The soil there does not have such characteristics. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao Hei. Xiao Hei also nodded. That is indeed the case. It was very easy back then. How could it be as difficult as it is now? Perhaps it's a problem with this area? Di Beichun said in a low voice. His eyes were filled with thoughts. After spending so much time digging, the sun had gradually set below the horizon, and night had begun to fall. Everyone sat on the ground dejectedly, trying to figure out where the problem had come from. At this moment, another team arrived at this area. Baichen's eyes lit up when he saw the leader of the team, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. Wenyin, the person in the lead, seems to be Huang Futing of the Huangfu clan, right? Murong Jing used his shoulder to nudge Jiang Wenyin as he spoke in a low voice. Jiang Wenyin nodded slightly. That's right, it's him. I heard that he entered the ancient battlefield as a mercenary this time. The dignified young master of the Huangfu clan has actually fallen to such a state. It really makes one sigh. In the past, I didn't think it was a big deal. After all, the dark element has always been disliked by others. However, ever since I saw what the Di family did to Beichun, I feel that the Huangfu family's decision back then was a little too much. So what if it was of the dark attribute? Why do you have to force him to this extent? The competition between the Huangfu clan's disciples is even more intense than what we've seen. Everyone kicks a man who's down, so it's not strange for such a situation to occur. After listening to the conversation between the two, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Futing with a complicated gaze. Chapter 5795. Only by establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly could the Dark Power be accepted by everyone. Only in this way would the cultivators of the Dark Attribute not be discriminated against. Not every family would be as tolerant as the Di family. Many cultivators did nothing wrong and were treated like this just because they awakened the wrong attribute. Thinking about it, this was indeed ridiculous, but it was true. After seeing Di Beichen and the others, Huang Futing could not hide the surprise on his face. Previously, after hearing that Di Beichun had fallen, all of them had fallen into endless grief. Di Beichun had given them hope back then. Because of Di Beichun, they had a direction to work towards. Although everyone had worked hard to improve their cultivation during this period of time, their hearts were unprecedentedly calm. This was because they were eagerly looking forward to the day when everyone would take them seriously. After living in the dark for too long, they only hoped that one day they would be taken seriously by everyone. Di Beichen had taught them the cultivation method of the dark attribute, which was why they were where they were now. However, if Di Beichen had fallen, then it seemed that they would return to their previous dark and hopeless lives, which was something they absolutely did not want to see. Even if they had only known Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang for a short time, these two people occupied an extremely important position in their hearts. For the past few days, everyone had been unable to sleep or eat well, and they were always worried about this problem. It was not until this moment that everyone was completely relieved. It turned out that the news was not true. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were still safe and sound. Noticing the expressions of Huang Futing and the others, Di Beichen had already guessed their thoughts. He chuckled and said, "Are you surprised that we are still alive?" Huang Futing originally thought that with so many people present, he did not dare to acknowledge Di Beichen. At this moment, after hearing Di Beichen's words, he also relaxed. When we heard the news that you had fallen, everyone was unwilling to believe it. Until now, everyone still hasn't calmed down. It's great to see that you're all fine. Not only Huang Futing, but the cultivators behind him nodded as well. Although they didn't say anything, their joy and excitement could be seen from their expressions. Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing were a little surprised when they saw how close Di Beichen and Huang Futing were. They didn't expect the two to be friends. Although Beichen hasn't been in the upper realm for long, he is quite popular, Jiang Wenyin said with a smile. Murong Jing nodded. With Beichen's character, many people are willing to make friends with him. This is not strange. Perhaps it's because they're both of the dark attribute that they hit it off so well. Jiang Wenyin discovered that the relationship between Di Beichen and Huang Futing was not ordinary. Logically speaking, the two of them did not have many opportunities to interact on a daily basis, so the possibility of this was very small. The only explanation was that the two of them had the same attributes, so they had a lot in common. Do you need me to introduce you? Di Beichen looked at Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing, then looked at Huang Futing. As far as he knew, Huang Futing was a rather famous figure in the upper realm. Perhaps he already knew Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing. Hearing this, Huang Futing and Jiang Wenyin looked at each other and smiled. They said together, "No need, we've met before." Chapter 5796. As Di Bei Chen's voice fell, the smiles on the three people's lips deepened. "It's been a long time, Brother Huangfu." Jiang Wenyin smiled. "After you left the Huangfu family, I haven't seen you for many years." Huang Futing smiled faintly. It had been so long, and he had already accepted it. "Although I didn't change my surname, I have nothing to do with the Huangfu family anymore." Jiang Wenyin nodded. "I understand. I'm very happy to meet the new you, Brother Huangfu." "I'm very happy too." Huang Futing glanced at Di Beichen, and a sense of gratitude welled up in his heart. Ever since he left the Huangfu family, he had completely said goodbye to his previous identity. However, in everyone's eyes, he was just a joke. All these years, he had deliberately avoided people he knew in the past because he didn't want to see those mocking gazes. However, because of Di Beichen's introduction just now, he and Jiang Wenyin were once again on equal footing. He hadn't felt this way for a long time. In the past, he didn't understand why Di Beichen and Jiang Wenyin had only been in the upper realm for such a short time. Even if they had the support of the Di family, it was strange that they could gain a foothold so quickly. However, after interacting with them, he completely understood that the current Di Beichen was an existence he was willing to sacrifice his life for. To them, being on equal footing was more important than anything else. "What are you doing here?" Huang Futing also noticed the holes around Di Beichen and the others and asked doubtfully. "You'll have to ask Di Beichen about that," Murong Jing joked. Di Beichen glanced helplessly at Murong Jing and said, "According to the information we've gathered, there should be a blood spirit stone buried here, but we haven't found it after digging for a long time." "Oh." Huang Futing was a little surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang handed over the blood spirit stone. "This is a blood spirit stone. Any cultivator would be able to sense the power of this blood spirit stone just by sensing it. Such a treasure is buried underground?" Huang Futing was surprised. If it was really like this, then this was a great opportunity. "Originally, we were very confident, but now, we don't know." Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. She couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. Logically speaking, for this place to be so strange, there must be something special about it. Otherwise, it would be too strange. "Why don't we give it a try as well?" Huang Futing looked at the people behind him and asked. Following that, Di Beichen and the others watched as Huang Futing's group began to dig around. However, the results were the same as theirs. After a short moment, Huang Futing and the others stopped as well, and they started to wonder exactly what was wrong with this matter. As the night deepened, everyone decided to stay here and rest for the night. Although the various situations in the ancient battlefield were a little strange, at least they didn't have to worry about any danger. Therefore, they could rest at ease at night. However, just as everyone was resting peacefully, Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out. "Look, there seems to be something moving underground." As soon as he said that, everyone opened their eyes and looked at the ground. Chapter 5797. Suddenly, everyone became spirited. Judging from the range and volume of the fluctuation, it seemed to be similar to the blood spirit stone. Could it be that the thing moving now is the blood spirit stone? This thing has intelligence and can actually run? Bailey Yinshe revealed a look of surprise. If that was really the case, then everything made sense. No matter how they dug during the day, they couldn't find it. It might be in a very deep place and would only appear on the surface at night. It's very possible. Let's take a look and find out. Di Beichen stood up. This situation also piqued his interest, and he felt that it was very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also moved. This kind of strange scene was not usually seen, so they naturally wanted to see what was going on. Looking at the undulating ground in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang pierced the ground with her sword and found that a blood spirit stone had appeared very close to it. Taking out the blood spirit stone, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile, "That's right, this undulating thing is the blood spirit stone." At the same time, everyone also took the blood spirit stones from the ground. I didn't expect this place to be so magical. The blood spirit stones can move at night. Jiang Wenyin had a look of amazement on his face. This kind of situation was simply unimaginable on a normal day. But now it was really happening. Di Beichun, you really didn't lie to me. This is really a good place. Murong Jing looked at the blood spirit stone in his hand, his face full of smiles. This kind of treasure was really helpful for cultivation. Judging from the undulating ground, the number of blood spirit stones here was also very shocking. Di Beichun chuckled. Of course I wouldn't lie to you. Everyone should seize this opportunity. Hearing this, everyone smiled and responded. This was a good opportunity, and everyone hated that they couldn't grow more hands. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Xiao Xuanzi all moved together. They couldn't let go of such a good opportunity. For a moment, everyone was busy grabbing the blood spirit stones. During this process, everyone discovered that the blood spirit stones that were active on the surface were the easiest to grab. The other blood spirit stones that were less active were located further down and were more troublesome to grab. Thus, everyone prioritized picking the best ones. In the process, if they were not careful, they would bump into each other. Situations where their heads bumped into each other also happened from time to time, causing everyone to laugh. Regardless of whether it was the cultivators from the Murong clan or the mercenaries with the dark attribute, everyone sighed in their hearts. If it were any other ordinary person, they wouldn't even mention such an opportunity. But who wouldn't want to keep it for themselves when they encounter treasure? However, Di Beichun and the others seemed to have never thought of this problem, and this point was deeply engraved in their hearts. When the first ray of sunlight appeared, everyone realized that the ground had stopped moving and returned to its original state. At this moment, everyone came to a realization. These spirit stones are really interesting. They only float around at night. Who knows where they have gone during the day? Huang Futing said with a smile. Everyone's harvest last night was not bad. It just so happens that we can rest during the day. Otherwise, if it was like this for the whole day, we would be exhausted to death, Bai Li Yin Che said with a smile. Although it looked very simple, it was actually quite tiring after a whole night. Normally, everyone was not good at digging. After digging for a whole day, they really felt sore all over when they stood up. Chapter 5798. Fortunately, we didn't come to the ancient battlefield. Otherwise, we would have been frightened and not surprised at all. It would have been better to leave directly after cultivating outside. Hearing Jiang Wenyin's words, everyone nodded. They all had the same opinion on this point. Along the way, no one had gained anything. However, the blood spirit stone alone was enough to soothe everyone's gloominess. Huang Futing, let me tell you a piece of news. Junling's son has been possessed by an expert from the ancient battlefield. Di Beichun put away his joking expression and said seriously. Hearing this, Huang Futing was slightly stunned. Possessed? Yes, we saw it with our own eyes. Di Beichun nodded. We tried to dissuade him at that time, but he didn't believe us at all. Bai Li Yin Che shrugged and spread his hands. There are still people alive on the ancient battlefield? Huang Futing found it hard to believe. He had seen the battlefield, and the scene was really bloody and terrifying. Such a tragic scene, such a terrifying, murderous aura. He had always thought that everyone was dead. He didn't expect to suddenly hear such news. This was even more shocking than Jun Lingxuan being possessed. Di Beichun nodded and said worriedly, in short, this may be a big problem. We have to be mentally prepared. Huang Futing also understood Di Beichun's meaning. Originally, he was very happy to know that Jun Lingxuan was dead. After all, the Jun family had always been enemies with the Di family. The death of the Jun family's young master was definitely good news to them. However, after being possessed, the problem left behind by this method of death was obviously not small. After we leave here, we will try our best to inform others of this news so that everyone can be mentally prepared. I understand. In the next 2 days, everyone collected blood spirit stones at night and rested during the day. During this process, they increasingly felt that this land was magical. It was clearly a scene of devastation at night, but everything returned to normal during the day, as if nothing had happened. Although it had only been 3 days, everyone's harvest was extremely rich. In addition to the blood spirit stones, everyone had another harvest, and that was that their movement speed had increased. Because they had to grab the blood spirit stones as soon as they saw them, everyone moved as fast as they could. If they were even a little slower, they would miss this opportunity. In 3 days, everyone had practiced the ability to see and move quickly. At least, their speed was much faster than usual. Just when everyone thought that this could continue, the appearance of 2 teams broke the original silence. When everyone saw the Nangong family's team slowly pass by, they felt very uneasy. Dibei-chun? Nangong Yuqing looked at Dibei-chun not far away, his eyebrows slightly raised, his eyes filled with a trace of surprise. Long time no see, Nangong Yuqing. Listening to the other party's understatement, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but think back to the time when he brought Nangong Xiao along to apologize. It was a stain that he would never forget for a long time. Thinking of this, Nangong Yuqing's expression changed slightly. I didn't expect you to be so lucky. It seems that you were surprised that we are still alive. Dibei-chun smiled. Chapter 5799. Listening to Nangong Yuqing's impolite words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were too lazy to pay attention to him. In any case, there was nothing good between the 2 sides. However, from Nangong Yuqing's calm expression, they could see that what he said was true. He had indeed guessed that they were still alive. I heard that Jun Lingxuan disappeared with you. Since you are here, does that mean that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou are already dead? Nangong Yuqing looked at Dibei-chun. There was a great hatred between him and Dibei-chun. Moreover, because of Nangong Xiaolong, he had lost face in front of Dibei-chun. However, since Xiao Sou and Jun Lingxuan got engaged, the hatred between him and Dibei-chun was not so deep. If it weren't for Xiao Sou, he wouldn't have offended Dibei-chun. Now that Xiao Sou had completely rejected him, why should he still be obsessed with these things? Of course, he still didn't like him, but he wasn't as angry as before. Xiao Sou doesn't know, but Jun Lingxuan is indeed dead. Dibei-chun said frankly. Oh, Nangong Yuqing chuckled. You are really calm. Aren't you afraid that I will spread the news and the Jun family will come to make trouble for you? Before Jun Lingxuan died, the conflict between me and his family never stopped. Besides, I wasn't the one who killed him. Hearing Dibei-chun's words, Nangong Yuqing was slightly surprised. If you didn't kill him, who else could it be? You can only blame Jun Lingxuan for being greedy. He didn't listen to our advice and insisted on taking the storage ring, Jiang Wenyan added. Nangong Yuqing glanced at Jiang Wenyan. Ever since the last time he met Jiang Wenyan in the Piercing Wind City, he knew that Jiang Wenyan had become very close to Dibei-chun and the others. As for the news of Jiang Wenyan, Dibei-chun, and the others disappearing at the bottom of the lake, he had also heard about it. Most importantly, he had encountered the Jiang family's team not long ago. It seemed that everyone was extremely saddened by the news of their young master's death. Of course, he also understood why Jiang Wenyan stood out at this time. He wanted to prove that everything Dibei-chun said was true. What does the storage ring have to do with his death? Nangong Yuqing was somewhat puzzled. He had also seen a storage ring during the battle, but as soon as he approached it, he was deterred by the terrifying aura it exuded and didn't dare try to take it. He believed that Jun Lingxuan was not a fool. After feeling such a terrifying aura, wouldn't he be courting death if he still tried to take it? That storage ring is different from the storage rings you have seen before. There is a soul inside. Jun Lingxuan's body has been possessed. Even though Dibei-chun didn't have a good impression of Nangong Yuqing, he didn't intend to hide this matter. No one knew what Qing Devil would do with Jun Lingxuan's body. It was better to say it early, so that everyone would be prepared. Nangong Yuqing's reaction was the same as Murong Jing and Huang Futing's. His face was filled with disbelief at first, but after noticing the seriousness on Nangong Yuqing's face, he understood that it was not a joke. Jun Lingxuan is too pitiful. He was actually possessed? Chapter 5800. If all of this is true, then you're really lucky. The other party didn't kill you as well? Nangong Yuqing raised his eyebrows. To be able to possess Jun Lingxuan's body, it It was clear that the other party was much stronger than Jun Lingxuan. It was even possible that the other party was the soul of a powerhouse from the ancient battlefield. In the face of such a powerhouse, Di Beiqin and the others shouldn't have been able to fight back. It was too strange that they were able to escape. Hearing Nangong Yuqing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised. It seemed that Nangong Yuqing wasn't a brainless person. However, they didn't care whether Nangong Yuqing believed them or not, so they didn't intend to explain. The only reason they warned them was because they were cultivators from the upper realm. As for what the other party would do, it had nothing to do with them. Nangong Yuqing was waiting for Di Beiqin's explanation, but when he saw that Di Beiqin and the others didn't seem to have anything to say, he felt a burst of depression. Come on, can't you explain everything? It's so depressing to only explain half of it. Of course, he wouldn't admit it. The cultivators from a Nangong family looked at each other in dismay. This news was too sudden. Up until now, they had never seen a cultivator being possessed. For a moment, they were looking forward to seeing Jun Lingxuan. If he was really possessed, they didn't know what would happen. After seeing that Di Beiqin and the others didn't intend to pay attention to him, Nangong Yuqing licked his lips and suddenly said, "What are you doing here? We're tired from walking. Can't we rest here for a while?" Bailey Hongzhuang coldly said. Nangong Yuqing looked at the scorching sun above his head and suspiciously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't know why, but he felt that this reason was a bit far-fetched. Under the scorching sun, even he felt extremely hot. If he really wanted to rest, he would have found a place with trees to sit and rest. Why would he stay here? When Murong Jing and the others noticed the suspicion in Nangong Yuqing's eyes, their hearts skipped a beat. It wasn't easy for them to discover the secret of this place, but they didn't want to share it with Nangong Yuqing. This guy really likes to be suspicious. Bali Yanche rolled his eyes. We just happened to run into other people here, so we chatted for a while. With that, Bali Yanche said, "Let's go. It's quite hot here." Everyone naturally understood what Bali Yanche meant. They nodded and turned to walk forward. Seeing the other party turn around and leave without looking back, Nangong Yuqing's expression became even more awkward. Was he really thinking too much? However, just as everyone was about to turn around and leave, they suddenly heard other movements coming from behind. "Brother Huangfu, long time no see." Nangong Yuqing smiled as he looked at the group behind him. His voice was filled with friendliness and joy. As soon as his voice fell, Huangfu Ting's body stiffened and he stopped in his tracks. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Huangfu Ting. Could it really be such a coincidence? Jiang Wenyan and Murong Jing turned around to look. As expected, the Huangfu clan's group appeared not far behind them. Chapter 58:01. "That's right, it's them," Jiang Wenyan replied. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. She really didn't want to see anyone, but they just had to appear. From Huangfu Ting's point of view, it was obvious that he didn't want to see anyone from the Huangfu clan. They had been so cruel to him, without the slightest bit of kinship or concern. In addition, he wasn't living a glorious life, so he naturally didn't want to see them. The darkness attribute cultivators all looked at Huangfu Ting worriedly. No matter how carefree he usually appeared, they all knew that things weren't as simple as they seemed on the surface. Just like themselves, they also felt the same way about their former family members. However, they were better off than Huangfu Ting. Huangfu Ting was the one who had truly fallen from the heavens to such a state. Although there was a huge psychological gap between them, they definitely couldn't compare to Huangfu Ting. "Brother Nangong, it's indeed been a long time. Being able to meet this time proves that we're fated." The young leader of the Nangong clan smiled as he looked at Nangong Yuqing. From his amiable attitude, it was obvious that the two of them had a good relationship. "It's been a few years since we last met. I originally thought that you would also appear in the Immortal Cloud's secret realm, but I didn't expect to not see you." Huangfu Gang smiled faintly. "Previously, I was tied up with other matters, so I didn't have time to go to the Immortal Cloud's secret realm. In fact, I've always regretted it. You're too modest. Do you think I don't know you? The Huangfu clan is so powerful, and your experience is not something we can compare to." Nangong Yuqing smiled. "Di Beichun, let's go." Huang Futing, who had been silent all this time, spoke up. Just by hearing the familiar voice, he already knew who it was. However, he really didn't want to face the other party right now. Deep Baicha nodded. All right. With tacit understanding, everyone quickened their pace. However, just as they were about to leave, a voice rang out from behind them. Big brother, is that you? Huang Futing moved even faster, and the other party rushed out of the Huangfu clan's group without any hesitation and quickly caught up to Huang Futing. After seeing the familiar face, the man's face was filled with indescribable excitement. He grabbed Huang Futing's arm tightly. Big brother, it's really you. Great, I finally found you. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Huang Fu Chun couldn't control his emotions. Huang Futing fell into silence as he faced the other party's sincere gaze. Fourth brother, he is no longer a member of our Huangfu clan. How can you still call him big brother? Huangfu Gang's displeased voice came from behind with a hint of reprimand and admonishment. Come back quickly. Don't talk to this person who appeared out of nowhere. Huangfu Chun glared at Huangfu Gang. Second brother, how can you be so cold-blooded? I don't care about that. He's my big brother. Even if he's chased out of the family, he's still the big brother I respect the most. This has never changed from the beginning to the end. Fourth brother, you. Huangfu Gang became angrier and angrier at Huangfu Chen's rude rebuke. Back then, this was a decision made by the clan. How could you violate the clan's rules? What do you mean by clan rules? My big brother has never done anything wrong. Those punishments are also groundless accusations. Chapter 58:02. Big brother, you left the family without saying anything back then. I've been looking for you, but there was no news at all. I'm so happy now. I wasn't interested in this ancient battlefield, but I didn't expect to see you here. Everything was worth it. Fourth brother, I'm no longer a member of the Huangfu family. Just forget about me and pretend that you never had a big brother like me. Huangfu Ting's eyes dimmed. He had always understood how important he was in Huangfu Chen's heart. Even though the entire family was extremely disappointed that he had awakened the dark force, Huangfu Chen had never cared about this from the beginning to the end. Over the years, he had long become indifferent to the Huangfu family, and even subconsciously erased his former identity. However, Huangfu Chen had always been a person in the depths of his memory. At least he had a younger brother who had never betrayed him. Whenever he felt despair because he could not see the light of day, he would always think of this sunny face in front of him. That was his spiritual pillar to persevere, because he hoped that one day he could reunite with the family he recognized. Now that he was cultivating with Deep Baichun and knew that he was going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, it was an unprecedented hope. He hoped that one day he could stand in front of the Huangfu family and let them understand that there was no problem with the Dark Force. He could also become an outstanding cultivator. Big brother, don't talk nonsense. Huangfu Chun was a little anxious. I know everyone's attitude towards you is very bad, but that's them. In my heart, you've always been that outstanding big brother. Fourth brother, don't be silly. Huangfu Gang walked over. Do you think he's still the dazzling, peerless genius from back then? Feel his aura. His current cultivation is still inferior to yours. A dark attribute cultivator is destined to be abandoned by the upper realm. If you still want to be his follower like back then, you're courting death. Huangfu Gang's every word stabbed Huangfu Ting's heart like a sharp blade. The humiliating and sullen scene from back then seemed to appear before his eyes again. No one knew what kind of disdain and discrimination he had endured back then. Wasn't the arrogant Huangfu Gang in front of him like a follower back then? The affairs of the world were just so unpredictable, making people sigh with emotion. Huangfu Gang, I respect you as my second brother, but don't go too far with your words. Huangfu Chen glared at him. If Big Brother hadn't awakened the darkness attribute, would you have your current position? Don't forget, you couldn't compare to my big brother back then. Bang! Huangfu Gang unceremoniously punched Huangfu Chun in the face. Wake up and figure out who you're talking to. You. Huangfu Chun was furious. Just as he was about to explode, Huangfu Ting stood in front of him and looked at Huangfu Gang calmly. Fourth brother is still young and doesn't know any better. You don't have to be so calculative with him. Huangfu Gang chuckled. Huangfu Ting, you're no longer a member of the Huangfu clan. Don't flatter yourself. Why do you have to call him fourth brother? Sensing Huangfu Gang's arrogant attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others frowned. Chapter 5803. Huangfu Ting was once the next patriarch of the Huangfu family. As the second young master of the Huangfu family, Huangfu Gang had always been shrouded in the halo of Huangfu Ting. It was not until Huangfu Ting left the family that he took over Huangfu Ting's previous position and became the current young master. Murong Jing knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun had just arrived in the upper realm and did not know much about the Huangfu family, so he took the initiative to introduce them. After hearing this introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang completely understood. It turned out that there was hatred between the two of them, so at this moment they were speaking so impolitely. Even though there were many things that she did not know, she could guess from Huangfu Gang's appearance at this moment that he was shrouded in the halo of Huangfu Ting, how depressed and jealous he was. Even though he had everything now, he was still unwilling to let go. Just when everyone thought that Huangfu Ting could not help but lose his temper, he remained calm and did not even show any anger on his face. That's right, I was wrong. I'll leave now, okay? Even though Huangfu Ting was very tolerant, the jealousy in Huangfu Gang's eyes did not dissipate. You've disappeared for so many years. I thought you had died long ago. Now it seems that you've been able to live until now because of your ability to be a coward. TSK, it's really interesting. At the same time, the cultivators of the Huangfu family could not help but chuckle. Feeling the strange gazes of everyone, Huangfu Ting could not help but clench his hands. He deliberately tolerated it not because he was afraid of Huangfu Gang, but because he did not want to implicate Di Beichun because of his own affairs. He understood that Di Beichun was a very loyal person. If he had a conflict with Di Beichun now, he would definitely not sit idly by. However, he did not want Di Beichun to make an enemy of the Huangfu family. He was very grateful to Di Beichun because he had brought him endless hope. Everyone looked at Huangfu Ting, who was so tolerant. It was hard to imagine that such an arrogant person could be like this now. It inexplicably made them feel a little distressed. How glorious were you back then? No one was in your eyes. Now, you actually appeared here with a group of mercenaries. If it weren't for the mercenary guild discovering the ancient battlefield first, I'm afraid you wouldn't even have the chance to experience it. You're really down and out. Huangfu Gang sized up Huangfu Ting and the cultivators behind Huangfu Ting, and his eyes were filled with disdain. I don't think you're that great. If it wasn't for Huangfu Ting's awakening dark attribute, you would be nothing in the Huangfu family now. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, her cold eyes filled with disgust. You're the one who took advantage of him when he left. You should at least express some gratitude. Now that you're so aggressive, are you trying to prove that you're stronger than him? Linger sneered. Why didn't I see you so arrogant when I was in the Huangfu family? You're really a villain intoxicated by success. The sudden sarcasm stunned Huangfu Gang. After noticing that there were two peerless beauties standing up for Huangfu Ting, he was a little shocked. Oh, I really didn't know that you were quite popular with women. Are they also from the Mercenary Guild? Huangfu Gang asked. Chapter 5804. After listening to Nangong Yuqing's introduction, Huangfu Gang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a different expression. No wonder he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang looked familiar, but he had never seen such a beauty before. Only now did he remember that he had seen a portrait of the Saint of Light. He never thought that the real person would appear in front of him. The Saint of Light? Huangfu Chun was pleasantly surprised. Although he had never seen the Saint of Light before, he had heard many rumors about her. In a short time after coming to the upper realm, she had already gained a firm foothold, and no one could compare to her in terms of the light attribute. Such a legendary woman had appeared in front of him and was even speaking up for his brother. He felt that his brother's life was not as miserable as Huangfu Gang had described. Huangfu Gang's eyes flickered with a bit of embarrassment, but his attitude was no longer as unscrupulous as before. No matter who it was, they had to be wary of the power of the Holy Assembly. Saint of Light, I didn't know your identity and was a bit rude. I hope you can forgive me. Huang Fugang cupped his hands apologetically. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not seen Huang Fugang's face before, she might not have taken his words to heart. But now that she knew what kind of person Huang Fugang was, she could only say those words out of consideration for his feelings. Huang Futing was her friend. No matter what his identity was, she could not accept that Huang Fugang had bullied his friend. Moreover, it was impossible for such people to become friends. You don't have to be so courteous now. After all, we're already on opposing sides. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Fugang indifferently. Her hostile attitude was particularly obvious. Huang Fugang frowned. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would not give him any face. No matter what, he was the young master of the Huangfu family. On the contrary, Huang Futing was just a has-been. She actually chose to stand on Huang Futing's side. I have long heard that the Huangfu family is a great family, but looking at you now, I feel that the Huangfu family is just a facade. Di Beichun looked coldly at Huang Fugang. Ever since this guy appeared, he had been very unhappy. You don't have the slightest bit of affection for your own big brother. You're so overbearing and even mocking him. If you were heartless back then because of the power of darkness, I think it would be difficult for you to even leave the Huangfu family alive. As soon as he said this, everyone could not help but laugh. Di Beichun was still as sharp-tongued as ever. He did not give the other party any face. Huang Fugang's face was full of haze. Di Beichun, right? This is our family's business of the Huangfu family. You have no right to interfere. Didn't you just say that Huang Futing has nothing to do with your family? How can you say it's a family matter now? Di Beichun asked. Huang Fugang was stunned. His face turned awkward as he said angrily, "In short, this is our business. It's none of your business." Then you are wrong. Di Beichun shook his head and put a hand on Huang Futing's shoulder. He is my friend. His business is my business. If you provoke him, it is the same as provoking me. Huang Futing's body stiffened slightly. A warm current flowed through his heart. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang who stood out first, or Di Beichun who now regarded him as a brother, they both made him feel extremely warm. Chapter 58:05. Huang Fugang looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief, thinking that Di Beichun and the Holy Maiden had gone crazy. Anyone who wasn't a fool wouldn't choose to stand on Huang Futing's side at this time. On one side was the young master of the Huangfu family, and on the other side was a dark attribute cultivator with no future. However, these two people chose Huang Futing without hesitation. Were they crazy? Nangong Yuqing could understand Huang Fugang's thoughts at this moment. If this happened to someone else, he would find it strange, but when it happened to Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't find it strange at all. These two people had always acted like this, even when they chose to help Ao Lingxiao. However, the end result proved that they were right, and Ao Lingxiao was wrongly accused. Madmen. These people were madmen to begin with. In the past, it was only them, but now, even Morong Jing and Jiang Wenyan had become part of it. Huang Futing, I didn't see how capable you were. Huang Fugang's eyes were cold. I don't know what's so good about you. Apart from Huang Fuchun and that slut, you've also attached yourself to the Radiant Sacred Assembly and the young master of the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang, you are the Holy Maiden of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, yet you're protecting a dark attribute cultivator. Aren't you afraid that the Radiant Sacred Assembly will punish you? Huang Fugang's eyes shone as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Others were fine, but light and darkness were irreconcilable. As the Holy Maiden of Light, she actually dared to collude with a dark attribute cultivator. Wasn't she just seeking her own death? You don't have to worry about that. I know what I'm doing very well. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was unrestrained, still as calm as before. I think you've been in seclusion for too long, so you don't know much about the outside world. So what if I'm the Holy Maiden of the Radiant Sacred Assembly? My husband is a dark attribute cultivator. Do you think I'll be afraid? What? Huang Fugang couldn't help but raise his voice, his startled eyes wandering between Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. Then he suddenly said, I was wondering why you were with Huang Futing. So you're both of the dark attribute. Huang Fugang, how's Wan'er now? Huang Futing, who had remained calm all this time, suddenly became agitated. He quickly walked forward and rushed before Huang Fugang. His pitch-black eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the latter, as if he was suppressing his endless emotions. You mean that bitch? Huang Fugang raised his eyebrows. Huang Fugang didn't expect that Huang Futing, who had been enduring silently, would dare to attack him at this moment. He couldn't dodge in time and took a solid punch. Huang Fugang took 2 steps back. His resolute face seemed to be set ablaze, and his eyes turned red. He fiercely punched Huang Futing's face. You dare hit me? After that bitch married me. I know she still misses you in her heart. Huang Fugang hit Huang Futing madly. What's so good about a guy like you? I've been so good to her. Why is she still thinking about you? Since you've already left, why are you still haunting me? Isn't it better to just die? Huang Fugang roared, his blood-red eyes filled with endless anger. Bali Yin Che wanted to pull Huang Fugang away, but was stopped by Di Beichen. Chapter 5806. Even if Huang Futing wasn't Huang Fugang's match, this kind of power wouldn't take his life. It would only cause physical pain. Although everyone didn't like Huang Fugang's smug look, it seemed that the grudge between the two wasn't simple. There was even a woman involved. From Huang Fugang's roar, everyone understood that the woman was the most important reason for the grudge between the two. The two brothers fell in love with the same woman, but that woman loved Huang Futing. It was originally an excellent arrangement, but fate made a fool of her, and she married Huang Fugang. Perhaps this was the helplessness of a big family. Facing Huang Fugang's fist, Huang Futing didn't retaliate. The fist smashed on the face. It was very painful, but couldn't compare to the pain in his heart. When he left the family, the most painful thing was this. Even if Wan'er begged him to take her away, he couldn't do that. He didn't even have a future for himself, let alone a future for Wan'er. Even now, he didn't feel that his decision was wrong. He knew very well how he had come through all these years. If it wasn't for the unyielding belief supporting him, he might have really disappeared from this world long ago. However, when he heard the news about Wan'er, he was still so heartbroken. Once they were innocent. Wan'er had always believed in him and worshipped him. It was already very close to their wedding date, but at that time, his talent awakened. When Huang Futing's face was covered in blood, Huang Fugang finally stopped. Look at yourself now. Do you still have the high spirits from back then? Huang Fugang's face was expressionless. Instead of living like this, I might as well just die. Huang Futing didn't speak. He struggled to get up from the ground. His eyes were dim, but the determination in his eyes never wavered. After venting, Huang Fugang didn't seem to be willing to say anything more. Facing the gazes of Di Beichen and the others, his expression changed slightly. He didn't expect himself to be unable to control his emotions at this time. Let's go. Huang Fugang waved his hand and led the cultivators of the Huang Fu family forward. They're leaving just like that? I thought there would be a big fight. Xiao He shook her feet and said as if the world wasn't in chaos. Huang Fu Qin did not leave with them. Instead, he stood firmly beside Huang Futing. Big brother, just let me go with you. Ever since you left, there's no point in me staying in the family. Everyone follows second brother, but I don't like him, Huang Fu Chun said gloomily. A trace of a smile appeared on the corners of Huang Futing's mouth. Don't be silly. Look at me now. Could it be that you want to fall into such a state as well? Your cultivation talent has always been very good. Only in the clan can you receive the best training. Is it really that important to have a high cultivation base? I think living happily is the most important thing. Huang Fu Qin's expression was firm. Big brother, you still don't understand that strength and the future are not the most important thing. I know you left for Sister Wan'er's sake, but do you know? Ever since you left, I haven't seen Sister Wan'er smile. Second brother treats her well, but I know that she's not happy at all, let alone happy. Huang Fu Qin's words caused Huang Futing's heart to tremble. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Was he wrong? Chapter 5807. Faced with Huang Fuchen's question, Di Beichen and the others fell silent. From Huang Futing's point of view, they felt that he was right, but from Miss Wan-er's point of view, perhaps this was the decision she didn't want to see the most. Big brother, I've respected and worshipped you since I was young. Even after you left the clan, for so many years, my thoughts have never changed. I feel that a man shouldn't make a woman sad. If you can't even do this, then don't call yourself a man. Huang Fuchen's words were fierce, and his emotions were even more agitated. He had searched for Huang Futing for so long and finally met him. This time, he had to try his best to persuade him. Otherwise, if he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when they would meet again in the future. Huang Futing remained silent. Huang Fuchen's words had given him too much shock, including what Huang Fugang had said earlier. All of this reminded him of the past. Seeing this, Huang Fuchen couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although it was the first time they had met, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would help Huang Futing. Miss Bailey, you're a woman. I believe you understand a woman's thoughts the best. If you were Sister Wan-er, what would you choose? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't expect Huang Fuchen to turn the question to her in the blink of an eye. For a moment, even Huang Futing looked at her. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang said, I don't know about your situation in the past, but for a woman, nothing else is more important than being with the person she loves. There were many types of women in the world. Some valued the future more, some valued relationships more, but none of them were wrong. She had never met Miss Wan-er and didn't know her true thoughts. However, judging for what Huang Fuchen said, Miss Wan-er should be deeply in love with Huang Futing. Even though Huang Futing had left the clan for so long, her thoughts hadn't changed. This proved that she valued her relationship with Huang Futing more. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Huang Futing's body trembled, and his gaze became even more complicated. Even if he didn't say anything, everyone could feel the sadness that came from his heart. It was a type of pain and sorrow that spread from the bottom of his heart and went deep into his bones. It was even to the extent that it was impossible to express with words. It carried boundless regret, yet he was powerless to do anything about it. Huang Fuchen tugged at Huang Futing's shirt. Big brother, did you hear that? Huang Futing raised his head, his eyes sparkling. Fourth brother, she's already married. Hearing this, Huang Fuchen was startled and could not help but loosen his grip. That's right. Even if Sister Wan-er's heart hasn't changed, she is still married. Big brother, you know that it's just a marriage alliance. It's a marriage alliance that has no other choice. But in the end, they got married. Huang Futing lowered his eyes. His entire being was in desolation. Everything that had happened in the past could no longer be rewritten. Even if he knew what Wan-er was thinking, it was too late. Everyone fell into silence. This situation was indeed very difficult to resolve. Even if they were not married, as long as Miss Wan-er was willing to elope with Huang Futing, they could still be together. However, if they eloped under such circumstances, they would really have to bear a bad reputation and not be able to face anyone. Chapter 5808. Bailey Hongzhuang and Linger looked at each other. They knew too well that as a woman, it would be unbearable for her to bear such infamy. Master, I'm afraid this matter is uncertain. Xiaohei sighed. Although she often wished for the world to be in chaos, in this kind of matter, she hoped to see the lovers get married. She originally thought that it was still very possible for Huang Futing and Miss Wan-er to be together. After all, in her opinion, dark attribute cultivators had a very bright future. Even if the cultivators in the upper realm had not accepted them yet, she believed that it was only a matter of time. After the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, everyone's opinion would gradually change. As long as Huang Futing was no longer in a state of being looked down upon, with his ability, he could give Miss Wan-er a very good future. However, just getting married was already an insurmountable chasm. Even if their hearts were together, it was impossible for them to be together all the time. Huang Fuchen fell into silence. He was thinking that if he saw his big brother, he and Sister Wan-er would leave with him. To him, the family did not make him reluctant to leave. In fact, in the past, he was also full of a sense of belonging to the family. However, When he saw how cruelly the family treated his big brother, he felt that everything seemed to be a little different from his judgment. In such a heartless family, there was no point in staying any longer. On the contrary, it was not necessarily impossible to go out and explore. He did not care about anything else. He just followed his heart. It was not until this moment that he realized that he had thought too simply. It turned out that everything was different from before. Even if he wanted to leave, it would not be so easy. Fourth brother, if you still don't come, then you can stay by yourself. Huang Fu Gang's voice came from the front. Huang Fu Chun subconsciously looked forward, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He took out something from his storage ring. Big brother, Sister One said that if I see you, I must give this to you. What is this? Huang Fu Ting looked at the brocade pouch in his hand in confusion. Huang Fu Chun shook his head. I don't know. Sister Wanner said that before I see you, she won't let me open it. Only you can see it. Huang Fu Ting didn't hesitate to open the pouch right away. He hadn't seen Wanner for a long time. Before he left, he didn't even take their keepsake. No matter what it was, staying by his side was just a thought. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not pay too much attention to it. They guessed that it was a letter from Wanner to Huang Fu Ting. After leaving, he had never seen her again. His longing for her should have been recorded in this letter. However, when he saw the contents of the paper, he suddenly took 2 steps back. His emotions became agitated in an instant, and tears flowed out of his eyes. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned as they looked at Huang Fu Ting, who'd suddenly had a great change in mood, and they looked at each other. They were completely unable to understand exactly what was written on this piece of paper to cause him to have such a breakdown. Could it be that what was written on it was not her longing and worry for him, but a heartless letter? Chapter 58:09. Huang Fu Ting didn't answer. He slowly squatted down and ran his hands through his hair. His eyes were already filled with tears. The gentle and kind girl from back then kept appearing in his mind. He had seen her often since he was very young. Because their families were friends, they had cultivated together since they were young and experienced together. At first, they didn't understand the feelings between men and women, but later on, they developed feelings for each other. Everything was so natural. Perhaps their feelings for each other had not experienced any great storms, but in their eyes, this kind of long-term relationship was more sincere. When he chose to leave, he was very pained. Even when Wan cried and begged him to take her away, he didn't agree. He thought that after a long time, Wan would gradually forget about him. But now it seemed that he thought too simply. Wan was never a fickle girl. Most importantly, he never thought that Wan would do this for him. Big brother, what did Sister Wan give you? Huang Fu Chun was puzzled. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what could make Huang Fu Ting fall into such emotions. He took the paper from Huang Fu Ting's hand, but when he saw the 2 bright red words at the top, he was stunned on the spot. His face was full of shock. A letter of divorce. Those 2 big words were clearly a letter of divorce. It's a letter of divorce. How is this possible? Although he knew that Sister Wan had always been thinking about his big brother, he also understood his second brother's feelings for Sister Wan. Logically speaking, it was absolutely impossible for his second brother to write a letter of divorce. As soon as Huang Fu Chen finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood what was going on. Heavens, it's a letter of divorce. Xiao He was stunned. So this means that Miss Wanner has already made up her mind to leave with Huang Fu Ting. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She was inexplicably shocked and touched. It seems that Miss Wanner really has deep feelings for him. In order to be with him, she has already prepared everything. Bailey Yin Che frowned slightly. Isn't it said that Huang Fu Gang likes Wanner very much? Why would he write a letter of divorce? Sometimes, it's even more painful to have her as a person, but not her heart. Jiang Wenyin sighed emotionally. When Huang Fu Gang made an appearance earlier, Chen Shi kept feeling that Huang Fu Gang was too overbearing, petty. However, he now understood why Huang Fu Gang treated Huang Fu Ting like that. Perhaps it wasn't because of his darkness attribute, nor was it because Huang Fu Gang couldn't compare to Huang Fu Ting back then and wanted to show off in front of him. The real reason was that the person he loved had fallen in love with Huang Futing. Especially when he saw that Huang Futing could not compare to him at all, yet he was still able to capture the heart of the person he loved. This kind of pain might not be any lighter than what Huang Futing had endured all these years. It was torture in the heart. Big brother, this is indeed second brother's handwriting. Huang Fuchun looked at the divorce letter carefully and turned to look at Huang Futing. Chapter 58:10. Huang Futing nodded slightly. He had recognized Huang Fugang's handwriting when he saw the words divorce letter. In fact, he had seen how much Huang Fugang liked Wan back then. He had always been willing to give up many things to Huang Fugang, but he could not give up on Wan. Suddenly, he understood why Huang Fugang had beaten him so fiercely. Perhaps it was because of the unwillingness in his heart, or perhaps it was because of his current miserable state. Big brother, Sister Wan gave you this divorce letter. Does that mean you two can be together? Meng Xing asked. All of their helplessness and despair had been resolved with this divorce letter. In fact, he knew very well that although Sister Wan had married his second brother, she had always lived alone in a place. Normally, she would be in closed-door cultivation. She almost never had the chance to see his second brother. They were just husband and wife in name. Huang Futing fell into hesitation. In this situation, he did not know what would happen if Wan followed him. Most importantly, if Wan family knew what she was doing, they would definitely be furious. Not only Wan but even Huang Fugang might be severely punished for writing such a divorce letter. After seeing Huang Futing hesitate, Di Beichun suddenly said, Huang Futing, since Miss Wan is prepared to abandon everything, as a man, could it be that you are not as courageous as a woman? That's right. You are a dignified man. She has done so much for you. If you still betray her, then don't blame me for looking down on you. Murong Jing could not help but speak up. He still remembered the first time he saw Huang Futing. He was so high-spirited. Even if he stood in front of a group of outstanding cultivators, he was still a person who could not be ignored. However, the current him was far too different from before. Although he understood that it had not been easy for him all these years, as a man, he should bear the responsibility that he should bear. If it was him, if a woman was willing to do this for him, then even if he had to give up his life, he would definitely take her far away. You have to be brave. Only when she is with you will she feel happy. Bailey Hongzhuang also spoke up. She had yet to meet this Miss Wan but her heart was already filled with deep admiration. So far, she had never seen a girl who dared to love and hate like this. Even if she had to bear the infamy of the world, even if she had to abandon her family, she was still willing. She understood that this was definitely not the result of a moment of impulse. Huang Futing had left the family for so many years. In these years, Wan had probably thought of all the consequences thousands of times. She must have spent a lot of effort just to get this divorce letter. After so many years, she didn't even know if Huang Futing was still alive, but she still did all of this. What an admirable woman she was. Huang Futing raised his head and looked at the crowd in front of him. Although everyone's words were not very polite, he knew in his heart that everyone was cheering for him. Everyone was supporting him. At this moment, he had also erased his cowardly self from his heart. He could no longer hide like a coward. He had to face it bravely. Chapter 58:11. Everyone watched as Huang Futing stood up, his dark eyes fixed on everyone. His eyes were overflowing with brilliance, blooming with an unprecedented, dazzling light. A warm smile bloomed on his heroic face. He suddenly turned around, his voice firm and serious. Fourth brother, do me a favor. Big brother, tell me. Huang Fuchen nodded hurriedly. He seemed to have guessed what Huang Futing was going to say next, and the corners of his lips had already risen quietly. When you go back, find a way to take Wan away. I will wait for you in Emperor Cloud City. Okay, Huang Fuchan solemnly agreed, his bright eyes shining like unpolished jade. Big brother, don't worry, I will definitely bring Sister Wan to you. When the time comes, you can't drive me away. Huang Futing laughed heartily, the haze in his eyes completely dispersing. Wan's actions had brought him endless strength. In the past, he had no future, but now he saw hope. Even if he was abandoned by his family, so what? He would stand up again. He would become the dazzling Huangfu Ting of the past. Since the family didn't give them a way out, he would create a bright path for Wan'er himself. Don't worry, as long as you are willing to stay, I will never drive you away. Looking at the bright Huangfu Ting, Huangfu Qin only felt that his old big brother had returned. Good. Huangfu Qin couldn't hide his joy. When we leave the ancient battlefield, I will quickly go to Emperor Cloud City. Hurry up and catch up with the team now. Huangfu Ting chuckled. Okay. Huangfu Qin nodded and was about to leave when Huangfu Ting suddenly placed a Qinquan bag in his hand. This thing is helpful for cultivation. Take it with you. Big brother, you need cultivation resources more than me. Somewhere in his heart trembled deeply. Huangfu Qin's voice suddenly became hoarse. His big brother had always treated him like this, always thinking of him when he had good things. Until now, this hadn't changed. Don't worry about me. I'm fine now. Huangfu Ting subconsciously looked at Di Beichen. It was this excellent man in front of him who brought hope to the dark cultivators. Take it. Huangfu Qin looked at the Qinquan bag in his hand, then looked deeply at Huangfu Ting. His smile was as bright as the sun. Big brother, thank you. In the next moment, Huangfu Qin turned around swiftly. His steps were light and quick because he could finally put down the stone that had been weighing on his heart for many years. Thank you, Huangfu Ting said as he looked at everyone. In the past, he had never had the courage to take this step, but everyone's words had completely awakened him. Murong Jing placed a hand on Huangfu Ting's shoulder. Huangfu Ting, actually, I'm quite envious of you. It's rare for a woman to be so sincere to you. You must not let her down. Huangfu Ting nodded. I understand. I've let her down in the past, but I won't do it again. That's good. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Seeing such a result, everyone felt sincerely happy. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of Huangfu Gang's angry scene from before. It must have been very painful all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichen. Her gentle voice carried a sigh. Beichen, my opinion of Huangfu Gang has suddenly changed. Did he think it through long ago and let go? Chapter 58:12. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was like a flower as she nodded. Me too. She understood that Huangfu Gang was not as heartless as they had thought. He definitely loved deeply, but he was unwilling and angry to deal with Huangfu Ting, but there was no hatred. Otherwise, if he was really narrow-minded, he would rather kill Huangfu Ting than give the two of them a chance to be together. That outburst, just now, was him putting an end to everything that had happened in the past. After Nangong Yuqing left with Huangfu Gang's group, he felt that something was wrong. He felt that there must be a reason why Di Beichen's group stayed there. He wanted to stay and find out what was going on, but he just inexplicably left with the Huangfu family. He had been in the ancient battlefield for so long, but he hadn't gained anything. According to his understanding, Di Beichen's group was very lucky. If they had gained something, wouldn't it be a pity to miss it? Just as he was thinking about how to tell Huangfu Gang about this, Huangfu Qin's figure suddenly caught up from behind. Huangfu Gang felt the footsteps and turned his head to look, but he didn't say anything. Brother Huangfu, don't you think it's strange that Di Beichen's group gathered there? Nangong Yuqing lowered his voice. I think there might be something we don't know. We've been in the ancient battlefield for so long, but besides the pavilion at the center of the lake, we haven't gained anything. It's strange that Di Beichen's group seems to be very lucky. Look, the inheritance of the pavilion at the center of the lake fell into the hands of their friends. At this moment, Han Bowen led the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect and arrived nearby. When he heard the name Di Beichen, his eyes lit up. As far as he knew, Jiang Wenyin and Bailey Hongzhuang had already met up with Di Beichen. Although everyone said that they had died in the lake, in his opinion, as long as he didn't see their corpses, they might still be alive. Although he was forced to give up, he was still thinking about the treasure. Brother Nangong. Han Bowen greeted him with a smile. After Nangong, Yuqing noticed Han Bowen and the others. His expression also changed. His calm face revealed a bit of caution and vigilance. Brother Han, It's rare to see you take the initiative to greet me. Brother Nangong, it's been so long since that incident. There's really no need to take it to heart. What do you think? Han Bowen had a smile on his face. Back then, we were all young and immature. Moreover, it's inevitable to have some small conflicts during training. Nangong Yuqing narrowed his eyes, a trace of haze flashing through his black pupils. They had a conflict in the early years, so he didn't have a good impression of him. Now that this fellow had taken the initiative to make peace, he must have some purpose. Otherwise, with this fellow's character, it was impossible for him to take the initiative to put down his face. What you said makes sense. Nangong Yuqing nodded. Let's forget about the past. I'll take my leave first. Even if Nangong Yuqing said that he didn't care, his cold demeanor showed that he didn't intend to bury the hatchet. Brother Nangong, wait. Seeing that Nangong Yuqing was about to leave, Han Bowen quickly stopped him. Chapter 58:13. Seeing that Nangong Yuqing didn't seem to want to talk to him, Han Bowen didn't mind and kept a gentle smile on his face. I think I heard you mention Di Bei-chun just now. Han Bowen asked tentatively, I heard that they died at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Is that true? Nangong Yuqing looked at Han Bowen suspiciously. Is there a conflict between you and Di Bei-chun? There isn't much of conflict. I'm just curious about this matter. If you don't want to tell me, then I don't need to tell you. Nangong Yuqing lazily withdrew his gaze. We still have to continue looking for opportunities, so we won't accompany you. Brother Nangong, why are you in such a hurry? Han Bowen sighed inwardly. Nangong Yuqing was also a shrewd person. If he didn't make things clear, then he definitely wouldn't tell him the truth. Thinking of this, he made a decision. Actually, when I was in the ancient battlefield, I saw Jiang Wenyan obtain a treasure. At that time, I was planning to snatch it, but I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly appear and let them escape. Later, I heard that they had died, but I didn't believe it. Maybe they had encountered other opportunities. If I could see them again, I would also like to. Before he finished speaking, his meaning couldn't be more obvious. Nangong Yuqing didn't expect Han Bowen to be so clear about the matter, but he was very interested in the treasure. Do you know what kind of treasure Jiang Wenyan obtained? Han Bowen shook his head. I'm not too sure. At that time, he was in a cave. It should have been left behind by a senior from the ancient battlefield. At that time, he immediately put it away, so we didn't even have a chance to see it. However, you've also been in the battlefield, so you should know how amazing the treasures of those seniors are. Their tyrannical auras aren't something we can touch, but Jiang Wenyan obtained one. I think it must be something amazing. Han Bowen guessed. Now can you tell me if you know anything about Di Bei-chun? Nangong Yuqing hesitated for a moment before saying, They're indeed not dead. I just saw them. Han Bowen's eyes lit up, but he wasn't surprised. As expected, where are they now? Over there. Nangong Yuqing pointed ahead. Big brother. When Huang Fuchun saw Nangong Yuqing point out Di Bei-chun's position, he couldn't help but look at Huang Fugang. After knowing that Di Bei-chun and Huang Futing were extremely close, he had already treated Di Bei-chun as one of his own. Naturally, he didn't want anything to happen to Di Bei-chun. Huang Fugang only glanced at him indifferently, his expression cold and distant. You don't need to worry about this. But just as Huang Fuchun was about to explain himself, he saw Huang Fugang turn his head away. He didn't even seem to be interested in talking to him. Letting out a faint sigh in his heart, Huang Fuchenboy understood that his previous actions had completely angered his second brother, so he did not bother with him at all. It seemed that whatever he said was already useless. Thank you, Brother Nangong. A smile appeared on Han Bowen's face. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave with his team. Chapter 58:14. Han Bowen paused and raised his eyebrows. Brother Nangong, why don't we go together? There aren't many treasures in the ancient battlefield, but each of them should be incredible. As long as we take them back, we'll split them equally. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, he was worried. Just Bailey Hongzhuang was difficult enough to deal with, let alone Di Bei-chun. Even though they hadn't been in the upper realms for long, they were all difficult to deal with. Nangong Yuqing turned to Huang Fugang. Brother Huangfu, what do you think? He had seen the strength of Di Bei-chun and Di Bei-chun. Even if his current cultivation was higher than theirs, after experiencing the immortal cloud's secret territory, he was afraid of the strength of these two people. The darkness attribute taboo technique was terrifying. Even if their two teams worked together, they might not be able to deal with it. Didn't want to teach D. Bachin a lesson to regain the face he lost. However, he didn't dare to act rashly. When Han Bowen saw Nangong Yuqing's actions, he was surprised. The fewer people there were, the better. If there were too many people, there would be less to split. Of course, he didn't have any objections. The Huangfu family's strength was well known. Since he was here, they couldn't ignore him. That's right, Brother Huangfu. This is a good opportunity. Huangfu Qin couldn't help but feel anxious. But before he could say anything, Huangfu Gang had already refused. You guys go, I won't go. Huangfu Gang said to Nangong Yuqing, Brother Nangong, we'll meet again if fate wills it. Hearing this, Nangong Yuqing felt that it was a pity, but he didn't try to persuade him. After what happened, Huangfu Gang probably didn't want to face Huangfu Ting again. Sure enough, dealing with family matters was the most troublesome. Huangfu Gang gave the order. Although the Huangfu family's cultivators were curious about this matter, they all left. Brother Nangong, are they difficult to deal with? Is that why you want to ask Huangfu Gang for help? Han Bowen asked. Nangong Yuqing's expression darkened. He nodded and then shook his head. They're difficult to deal with, but it shouldn't be difficult for our two teams to deal with them. That's good. Han Bowen let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had found a helper. Otherwise, the result would have been terrible. Even if he didn't come, I wanted to go back and take a look. I feel that they're in a strange place. What do you mean? Han Bowen calmed down and carefully listened to Nangong Yuqing's thoughts. After Nangong Yuqing explained the situation to Han Bowen understood what was going on. According to what you said, this matter is indeed a little strange. Let's go and take a look. The two of them hit it off immediately. If they were going alone, they would still be a little worried. However, with a companion, things would be different. By the way, did you see Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So along the way? Han Bowen shook his head. No, but the enmity between the Jun family and the Di family is deep. They disappeared together. Since Di Beichin and the others are still alive, I'm afraid that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So are in danger. Chapter 58:15. Possession. Even someone as calm as Han Bowen couldn't help but raise his voice at this moment. This was too shocking. Could it be that he doesn't want to admit that he killed Jun Lingxuan, so he deliberately made up this reason? Impossible. Nangong Yuqing shook his head with certainty. I've dealt with him before. Although I don't like Di Beichan, I have to say that he's a straightforward person. If he really killed Jun Lingxuan, then he shouldn't deny it, let alone make up such an unacceptable reason. Seeing this, Han Bowen stared at Nangong Yuqing. He didn't know why Nangong Yuqing was so sure, but he was inclined to believe it. I understand. Han Bowen nodded slightly. He had already made up his mind. If he saw Jun Lingxuan in the future, it would be best to stay away from him. Otherwise, if he really was a peerless expert, who knew what the result would be? After Huangfu Ting's matter was resolved, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in a very good mood. Among them, the most obvious was the group of darkness cultivators. Although this was Huangfu Ting's matter, they also seemed to have seen hope. If Huangfu Ting could bravely take this step, then so could they. Who didn't want to be with the person they liked? Hongzhuang, let's leave this place for now. Di Beichan saw that everyone had calmed down and said, we'll attract too much attention if we stay here. Nangong Yuqing is already suspicious. With his temperament, I don't think he'll let go of this opportunity. Maybe he's not far away, waiting to see what we do. Everyone looked at each other. Di Beichan's words were indeed reasonable. Nangong Yuqing had already asked this question before. That's right. Then let's leave first. It won't be too late to come back at night, Bali Yanche said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Let's go. Everyone walked forward, but they didn't follow Huangfu Gang's direction. They didn't want to run into him again. It would be best if they never ran into him again. After everyone had walked for a while, they suddenly saw a familiar figure on the way. However, when they saw this person, they did not find it strange at all. Only the person beside him caused their expressions to darken. Nangong Yuqing, did you come back because you missed us? Di Beichen looked at the surprised Nangong Yuqing with a mocking expression. This guy's suspicions were really heavy. According to Nangong Yuqing's thoughts, Di Beichen's group should have stayed there for a long time, but now they had left. Could it be that his judgment was wrong? Han Bowen also looked at Nangong Yuqing with a puzzled expression. Nangong Yuqing had made a solemn vow before, but now it seems that he wasn't. Han Bowen, we meet again. Jiang Wenyan's handsome face was filled with endless coldness. His ink-black eyes were filled with a cold seriousness. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't happened to appear, he wouldn't be in this world right now. Feeling the murderous intent in Jiang Wenyan's voice, Han Bowen's expression changed slightly. The corner of his mouth raised into a faint smile. Yes, what a coincidence. Originally, Di Beichen didn't know Han Bowen, but when he heard this name, his deep eyes were covered with a layer of darkness. When he saw Jiang Wenyan earlier, he had already mentioned this matter. Chapter 58:16. Nangong Yuqing, it seems you want to fight us to the end. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was cold, her voice full of disgust and provocation. When you left, I thought you had changed your temperament, but now it seems that it's really easy to change a leopard's spots. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Nangong Yuqing's expression became somewhat awkward. In fact, if it weren't for Han Bowen's appearance, he really wouldn't have wanted to confront Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. According to his original plan, he wanted to hide and observe Di Beichen and the others. But now that Han Bowen appeared, the smoke of gunpowder suddenly filled the air. Looking at Nangong Yuqing's tangled appearance, Han Bowen was secretly surprised. He didn't expect Nangong Yuqing to be so afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It was really beyond his expectations. Jiang Wenyan, I'm sure you know why we're here, so there's no need to beat around the bush. Take out the thing, and this matter will be over. Di Beichen suddenly sneered. His long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously, flashing a cold light that made people's hearts turn cold. Who gave you the courage to be so arrogant? His cold voice was filled with extreme arrogance, and his disdainful eyes were enough to intimidate everyone. Just his expressionless face alone was enough to give people endless pressure. Facing Di Beichen, Han Bowen suddenly felt his hands and feet turn cold, and the fear that came from the bottom of his heart spread uncontrollably. His heart was frantically trembling. This was the first time he had come into contact with Di Beichen, and the latter's aura was simply extraordinary. Qin Yunsek's eldest senior brother, Qin Hongliang, seeing this, stood in front of Han Bowen. His aura, as steady as a mountain, made Han Bowen breathe a sigh of relief. Young Master Di, this is the first time we've met. You really live up to your reputation. Qin Hongliang's expression was calm, as if he didn't feel the terrifying aura. Di Beichen narrowed his eyes. Whether it was strength or mental strength, Qin Hongliang was obviously stronger than Han Bowen, but he wasn't affected in the slightest. He really did have some ability. Same here. Young Master Di, we have no intention of being your enemy. Qin Hongliang's calm voice carried a calming power as he slowly said, as far as I know, this item was discovered by my junior brother and young Lord Jiang at the same time. It's normal for us to want to snatch it. I don't think it's possible for you to not interfere, but I also hope that you understand that we're all standing on our own side. I also hope that you won't take it to heart. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Qin Hongliang in surprise. This person's words were quite interesting. Judging from his words, today's battle was unavoidable, but he hoped that they wouldn't be enemies in the future. Di Beichen quietly glanced at Qin Hongliang. The corners of his lips hooked up into a mischievous smile. Just when everyone thought that he would agree, his tone suddenly changed. You think what you said makes sense? Qin Hongliang was stunned. Han Bowen first wanted to kill my brother, then he attacked my wife. If it weren't for the fact that you're no match for my wife, you wouldn't have hesitated to make a move, right? Now, you're telling me that we'll be friends even if we meet? Your thinking is too simple. A cool breeze blew, and his white robe and black hair fluttered in the wind. That devilish face was even more captivating. Chapter 58:17. Looking at Di Beichun, Nangong Yuqing and the others could only feel that even someone as powerful as him was being completely suppressed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Jiang Wenyan's eyes were overflowing with brilliance, and the corners of their mouths couldn't help but curl upwards. Murong Jing looked at the man in front of him, and even as a man, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He was really handsome. That's right. No matter who he was, if he dared to kill someone he cared about, then he wouldn't rest until he was dead. So what if he was crazy in the eyes of others? Ever since Di Beichun came to the upper realm, he had always been a maverick existence. The eyes of Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators were full of worship and reverence. That was their belief. The Dark Holy Sun was different from ordinary people. From the moment he made up his mind to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, he had already subverted everyone's understanding, and yet he still went crazy for it. Qin Hongliang stared at Di Beichun in a daze, and when he came back to his senses, his face had turned ashen. For a long time, he had always said this kind of thing. When had he ever met such an arrogant guy? Di Beichun, aren't you overestimating yourself? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're the young master of the Di family? Don't forget, if you don't have this identity, you are nothing at all. Qin Hongliang had already thrown his previous bearing to the side, and his roaring appearance didn't have the slightest bit of calmness and composure. If it wasn't for the Di family and the Holy Daughter of the Light, no one would know who Di Beichun was. Di Beichun just looked at Qin Hongliang indifferently, and his voice was as gentle as water, like the sound of nature, but it made people unable to help but go crazy. Indeed, if I wasn't the young master of the Di family, how could you be the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect? You. Qin Hongliang gritted his teeth, and only felt a stream of air rushing to the top of his head and exploding with a loud bang. Blood rushed to his face, and even his ears turned the color of pig liver. Let's see what you're capable of. In the next moment, a long staff appeared in Qin Hongliang's hand. This long rod was completely red, and there was a golden, protruding totem on top of it. It was as if a golden dragon was circling around it, and it was awe-inspiring and imposing. With a single glance, one could tell that this long staff was no ordinary item. Bang! With the stomp of the long staff, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground with the place where it landed as the center. Seeing this, everyone's pupils constricted. The strength of this long rod was obvious. This Qin Hongliang is an extremely outstanding disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. It is said that he is the junior of an elder. Whether it is cultivation resources or weapons, he is much better than ordinary cultivators. I heard that this long staff was something he obtained from a ruin a few years ago, and the Blue Cloud sect gave it to him as a reward. Not only that, it is said that he has already broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. Beichun, you must be careful. Murong Jing approached Di Beichun and introduced him in a low voice. Di Beichun's eyes turned slightly. From the moment Qin Hongliang appeared, he knew that his strength was not ordinary. Up until now, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon realm among the various forces. Since Qin Hongliang was able to break through, his strength was naturally not weak. Do you dare to fight one-on-one with me? Qin Hongliang waved his long staff, and even the air was filled with a sonic boom. The long staff was pointed directly at Di Beichun, and his ink-black eyes were as cold as knives, and his murderous aura was threatening. Chapter 58:18. Han Bowen had wanted to ally with the Nangong family to deal with Di Beichun and the others, but he had never expected that the situation would suddenly turn into a conflict between the two of them. Do you think I'm inferior to him? Qin Hongliang glanced at Han Bowen indifferently. The coldness and indifference in his eyes shocked Han Bowen. He immediately shook his head and did not dare to persuade him anymore. However, Qin Hongliang seemed to have been provoked by his words. His voice became even more resolute and unyielding. I won't stop until one of us dies. Do you dare? Di Beichun looked at the face in front of him that was flushed red with anger. His black eyes were like deep pools that contained a sharp and intimidating light. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, bringing with them an extreme danger and charm. Looking at Di Beichon like this, the women present could not help but exclaim in their hearts, "Evildoer!" He was a living evildoer. However, that extreme overbearingness and wildness of his made people fall deep into it and unable to extricate themselves. "I'll accompany you to the end." The cold words were filled with an endless, domineering aura. The cold and arrogant aura emitted from his body made people shudder. Qin Hongliang, who was originally furious, felt an inexplicable sense of guilt at this moment. However, he forced himself to maintain the angry expression on his face, unwilling to let others see the fear in his heart. In the next moment, Di Beichon stepped forward. His incomparably handsome face was cold and indifferent. The silver-sharp sword reflected an eerie cold light under the sunlight. His white robe fluttered without any wind, and his black hair brushed past his face. He was like a god descending to the mortal world. "Make your move." The corners of his lips curled up dangerously. His extremely pleasant voice was filled with murderous intent. "Ah!" Qin Hongliang roared. He, who had long since been unable to withstand such an aura, charged forward crazily. The red long rod in his hand was vigorous and powerful. The air seemed to be stirred by the long rod. His cultivation of the radiant moon realm was completely exposed as he attacked Di Beichon with frightening momentum. Di Beichon's figure flashed like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he quietly landed behind Qin Hongliang. After Qin Hongliang saw Di Beichon's figure disappear, he quickly locked onto the aura behind him. As the eldest senior of the Blue Cloud sect, his combat experience was also extremely rich. With a backflip, he waved his long staff and blocked Di Beichon's sharp sword. Ding! The blade of the sword collided with the long staff, and sparks flew everywhere. After sensing Di Beichon's cultivation, Qin Hongliang's heart was also at ease. Nebula Stage 9. Even if Di Beichon was really an outstanding existence in the same realm, it was impossible for Di Beichon to be his opponent in the gap between the two realms. If he killed Di Beichon, he would be famous from now on. After sensing the gap between the two's cultivation, Huang Futing and the others could not help but worry. He turned his head to ask Bailey Hongzhuang, but he saw a faint and elegant smile on the latter's beautiful face. That was the gentle gaze of someone looking at the person they loved, and it was also filled with deep trust. Seeing this, Huang Futing was even more confused. "Miss Bailey, there is a gap between the young master and Qin Hongliang's cultivation. Aren't you worried at all?" "Worried about what?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her clear black and white eyes were filled with confidence. "Don't worry, Beichon will be fine." Before fighting with a cultivator of the Radiant Moon Realm, she would be worried about this problem. However, even when facing Qing Devil, Di Beichon could hurt him. This proved the true power of his killer move. Chapter 5819. Although Huang Futing was doubtful, he believed in Bailey Hongzhuang. Since she said so, there was no need for him to worry. After the crowd put down their worries, they were no longer as nervous as before. Instead, they carefully observed the battle between the two. Clang, clang, clang. The sword and the staff kept colliding. The attack range of the staff was larger than that of the sword. In order to injure Qin Hongliang, Di Beichon had to close the distance between them. During this process, the crowd also witnessed how terrifying his ghostly figure was. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. They could only rely on their aura to lock onto him. If they were even a little slower, they would be seriously injured. However, Qin Hongliang's title as the eldest senior brother of the Blue Cloud sect was not for nothing. He had rich battle experience and was very powerful. For a moment, the two sides were neck and neck. In the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, this was the scene, but in the eyes of Nangong Yuqing and the others, it was a completely different scene. Qin Hongliang was in the Radiant Moon Realm. Although they knew that he had not used his killing move, the fact that they were tied showed that there was a problem. Nangong Yuqing secretly judged in his heart. If the person fighting Di Beichon at this moment was him, would his performance be better than Qin Hongliang's? The more Qin Hongliang fought, the more frightened he became. He thought that this would be an easy fight, but now it seemed that was not the case at all. Di Beiqian's movement technique was exquisite. Although there was a gap of one realm between them, his strength was not weaker than Nangong Yuqing's. As a result, Nangong Yuqing did not have any advantage. Wood binding technique. Qin Hongliang shouted coldly, and the power of the wood element burst out. Then, to everyone's amazement, they saw a piece of wood suddenly appear, densely intertwined together like a snake. In the blink of an eye, it formed a huge cage, trapping Di Beiqian in it. This is the technique of a wood element cultivator. Bai Yin Che's eyes narrowed, and a trace of shock and worry appeared on his handsome face. After the awakening of an elemental talent, the cultivators of each element would master the offensive techniques of their respective elements. However, it wasn't easy to grasp these methods. Not only did it require the methods of their respective powers, it also required their own comprehension ability. Obviously, this was their first time coming into contact with the wood binding technique. These vines seemed to have a life of their own as they continued to compress Di Beiqian as if they were trying to strangle him to death. Qin Hongliang controlled the wooden strips with both hands. He had only started cultivating the wood binding technique after breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. This wood binding technique seemed easy, yet it was extremely difficult to cultivate. It required one to have sufficient understanding of the wood attribute and be able to communicate with the wood attribute in the heavens and the earth before controlling and transforming it into one's own strength. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate the wood binding technique and had failed many times before it began to take shape. He believed that it was impossible for Di Beiqian to master such a method, since he had yet to break through to the Radiant Moon tier. Di Beiqian waved the sword in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, he had stabbed more than 100 times. But for some reason, these vines were extremely sturdy, and even the sharp sword could not pierce through them. Seeing that the gap in the cage was getting smaller and smaller, he knew that if he couldn't escape, he would really die here. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. This was the first time she had seen such a method, and it was definitely not easy to break through. She wanted to help, but the auras of Nangong Yuqing and the others had already locked onto them. Chapter 5820. Damn it, I didn't expect Qin Hongliang to be able to learn this move. Morong Jing cursed. His usually gentle face was now full of anger. This kind of move was almost unbreakable for cultivators below the Radiant Moon realm. After Di Beiqian discovered that his sword couldn't cut through the Rot Tan, he knew that the Rot Tan was filled with wood attribute energy and was far more resilient than normal. In this forest, wood attribute energy was the most abundant, so it was too difficult to use other methods to break it. The corners of Qin Hongliang's mouth gradually rose. Since the beginning of the fight, he had been secretly afraid that he would be defeated by Di Beiqian if he wasn't careful. In desperation, he could only use his killing move. In fact, he hadn't mastered this move for long, and it wasn't 100% successful. Fortunately, he was lucky this time and successfully used it. As long as Di Beiqian couldn't break this move, he would win. Han Bowen and the others smiled happily when they saw this scene. It seemed that the situation wasn't as bad as they thought. No matter how strong Di Beiqian was, he was still limited by his level. Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but secretly rejoice. He had always been afraid of Di Beiqian's strong rise, but he didn't dare to act rashly because he worried that he might not be a match for Di Beiqian. Now that Qin Hongliang had helped him solve this big problem, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. It was easy to imagine how happy he was. Di Beiqian, you're too arrogant. Qin Hongliang looked coldly at Di Beiqian, and his calm voice was full of ridicule. How arrogant was Di Beiqian before? Wasn't he still trapped in the Rot Tan and unable to move? If you admit your mistake and beg for mercy, I might consider letting you live. Qin Hongliang couldn't hide his pride. Of course, even if Di Beiqian begged for mercy, he wouldn't let him go. However, only by humiliating him before he died would he be able to vent his anger even more thoroughly. However, just when Qin Hongliang was feeling extremely complacent, a dazzling sword chi suddenly appeared from the vine cage. It was an extremely sharp sword energy that seemed to be able to cut through everything in the world. It was invincible and invincible. You think too much. The magnetic and pleasant voice carried with it an icy chill. Everyone only heard a crisp sound before the seemingly indestructible cage was completely shattered. A cool breeze blew and his robes fluttered. That godlike handsome figure once again appeared before everyone's eyes. His incomparably handsome face held a playful smile, with a hint of wickedness and arrogance, but it was so pleasing to the eye. The one who should be begging for mercy is you. Looking at Di Beichun, who had escaped, Qin Hongliang's eyes were filled with shock. For a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. How is this possible? His eyes were lifeless as if he had received a huge blow. His mind was completely blank. His master had clearly told him that this move could be considered his ultimate move. It was impossible for cultivators below the Radiant Moon Realm to break through this move, but Di Beichun had broken through it. How is this possible? Han Bowen and Nangong Yuqing's eyes widened, and their hearts were in a perilous situation. Soon, Nangong Yuqing's expression returned to normal. It seemed that he had been right all along. Di Beichun was an existence that defied common sense. Chapter 58-21. Even though this was the second time they had seen Di Beichun use this move, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still amazed. They were keenly aware that the second time Di Beichun used it, he was obviously more proficient than the first time, and his speed was also faster. In fact, they had practiced this move at the same time as Di Beichun, but they had never used it before. Even though they had practiced it for a long time, there was still a gap in the strength of the sword chi. Di Beichun did not give Qin Hongliang time to think. He stabbed out with the sword again, and a dazzling sword light quietly appeared. This time, everyone was closer, so they could feel it more clearly. Nangong Yuqing only felt that the sharp sword chi seemed to be able to pierce through everything. This was almost beyond his understanding. It was even more terrifying than the strongest martial skill he had ever seen. He could not believe that Di Beichun possessed such a martial skill. Even the Nangong family did not possess such a level of martial skill. A dazzling light flashed, and Di Beichun turned around indifferently and walked back to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Everyone looked at Qin Hongliang, who was still standing in the same place, with some doubts in their hearts. Wasn't this supposed to be a fight to the death? Why did it suddenly end? Eldest senior brother? Han Bowen called out softly, only to find that Qin Hongliang was still standing in the same place with the same expression as before, completely ignoring him. Seeing this, Han Bowen frowned slightly, not understanding what was going on. However, when he reached out to touch Qin Hongliang's head rolled to the ground, and his face spun a few times before coming to a stop. No one had expected such a situation, and for a moment, the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators' faces were filled with horror. Eldest senior brother. Everyone wailed, and when they looked at Di Beichun again, there was a trace of fear in their eyes besides hatred. In their eyes, the strength of their eldest senior brother was already an extremely powerful existence. But Di Beichun had not yet broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm, yet he was able to kill their eldest senior brother. If he broke through to the Radiant Moon Realm, that scene, they did not dare to think about it. Looking at the sorrowful faces of the Blue Cloud Sect's cultivators, Di Beichun did not care. It was Qin Hongliang who had proposed the death match, and the result was also his own choice. Di Beichun, you actually killed our eldest senior brother. Han Bowen pointed his finger at Di Beichun. His blood rushed to his head, and his face was filled with anger. Di Beichun only glanced at his hand, and Han Bowen could not help but be startled. He sheepishly withdrew his hand. So what? Han Bowen was stunned and continued. Our Azure Cloud sect will not let you off. So you're saying that you're forcing us to kill all of you? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing next to Di Beichun, suddenly spoke. Looking at the married couple's appearance, Han Bowen and the others were so angry that they were speechless. How could you speak like that? These two people were really a match made in heaven, where you kill and I sharpen my blade. Murong Jing and the others' eyes were cold, and it was obvious that they were ready to attack. As long as Han Bowen and the others dared to make any movements, they would definitely attack without hesitation. Seeing this, the Blue Cloud sect cultivators could only swallow their frustration. They were more worried that if Di Beichin and the others had the intention to kill, all of them might have to die here. Chapter 58:22. If he had known that they were such a useless bunch, he would not have chosen to come here with them. He suddenly admired Huang Fugang. Perhaps he already guessed that this would happen, so he left first. With such pig-like teammates, it was better to act on his own. Although Qin Hongliang's cultivation was good, his brain was not good. The situation should not have reached this point, but he had courted death by proposing a battle to the death. He deserved to end up like this. This guy must have not heard of Di Beichin's deeds, so he was overconfident. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret, so he could only regret it in hell. Nangong Yuqing, it seems that your vision is not very good. Bai Yanche looked at Nangong Yuqing mockingly. Do you want to try fighting with us? I heard that you have also broken through to the Radiant Moon stage. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were fixed on Nangong Yuqing. The cultivators of the Nangong family tensed up in an instant. Once they started fighting, a great battle would break out between the two forces. Han Bowen looked at Nangong Yuqing expectantly. If Nangong Yuqing wanted to fight with them, they would accompany him to the end. However, Nangong Yuqing ignored Han Bowen and said with a faint smile, "You think too much. I just dropped something and came back to look for it. It seems that I can't find it, so let's leave." What a joke. Di Beichin's move just now. Even he didn't have the confidence to avoid it. He did not want to lose his life here. Moreover, Qin Hongliang had nothing to do with him, so why should he take the risk for him? Han Bowen did not expect Nangong Yuqing to be so cowardly. He did not even dare to fight. So, what should they do? From the beginning to the end, Di Beichin only looked at Nangong Yuqing indifferently. He did not intend to pay attention to this guy, but sooner or later, he would become a stumbling block because of his appearance. When the time was right, he would completely eliminate this trouble. Since he did not understand the situation, there was no need to keep him alive. Nangong Yuqing smiled and cupped his fists. Just as he was about to leave, the sound of dense footsteps came from not far away. Just based on this sound, everyone was sure that this was a very large group, perhaps even more than the number of people here. Soon, a group of people appeared in everyone's sight. At first glance, Di Beichin noticed Qin Feng from the Great Devil sect. However, apart from Qin Feng, he also saw Chu Yingming and several other powers. "Qin Feng, we meet again." A warm smile appeared on Di Beichin's face. It was less cold and more amiable. Qin Feng was pleasantly surprised to see Di Beichin. "Beichin, you are still alive. This is great. Now, I'm afraid that everyone in the ancient battlefield thinks that we have died." Di Beichin chuckled. Almost everyone, when they saw them, would say this in the first sentence. Qin Feng shrugged helplessly. The incident at the pavilion in the middle of the lake has spread far and wide. In a short period of time, everyone knows about it. I think only a small number of people don't know about it. Why are there so many of you here? Chapter 58:23. When Chu Yingming and the rest saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were all standing there safely, they couldn't help but sigh inwardly. They were truly lucky. From the looks of it, the whirlpool that suddenly appeared at the bottom of the lake might have been there to save their lives. After all, under such circumstances, it would have been too difficult for Di Beichin's group to return to the shore alive. If they hadn't been sucked into the lake, perhaps they would have already died. Perhaps they might even have obtained some incredible fortuitous encounter at the bottom of the lake. Actually, we encountered it not too long ago. A few days ago, we noticed that something strange was happening in this area. In the evening, the fiery clouds would change into a unique shape and appear in this area every time. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. However, after noticing that this was happening frequently, we decided to come and take a look. Along the way, we met other groups. After finding out that everyone had the same goal, we decided to travel together. With a smile on his face, Qin Feng explained the situation without any hesitation. The cultivators from the various sects did not expect Chen Feng to be so frank. Although they had already noticed this problem, there were even more groups that hadn't noticed it. Since everyone was paying more attention to their surroundings, very few people noticed the abnormality in the sky. Chen Feng explained the situation in detail without hiding anything. It could be seen that the rumors were true. Chen Feng was very close to the young master of the Di family. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other helplessly. In fact, during the past few days, since they had nothing to do during the day, they had also noticed the sky. It seemed like the secret of the blood spirit stone couldn't be kept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook his head without leaving a trace. Since things had already turned out this way, there was no need to hide it anymore. After seeing the groups from the Huangfu family, Nangong family, and Qingyun sect today, everyone had a premonition in their hearts. Previously, they had walked for so many days without encountering a single group. However, in one day, they had encountered so many groups. It could be seen that this was fate. After Chen Feng finished explaining his purpose for coming here, he turned his gaze to the corpse on the ground not far away. It was Qin Hongliang, the eldest disciple of the Qingyun sect. As a member of the sect, he had some contact with Qin Hongliang. He didn't expect this guy to be dead. His gaze swept past Nangong Yuqing and Han Bowen before finally landing on Di Beichen and the others. He didn't even need to think to know that Qin Hongliang had died at their hands. When Han Bowen saw so many teams, he was overjoyed. Even the heavens were helping him. Originally, when he saw Nangong Yuqing's indifferent attitude, he was worried about what they should do. Once Di Beichen and the others attacked them, they would have the advantage in both numbers and strength. As a result, they would be in great danger. However, now that so many teams had come, the most important thing was that Xiao Yao Palace had a very good relationship with them. With a helper, their chances of escaping unscathed would be much higher. Han Bowen, what happened? How could Hong Liang? Gu Wenchang of Xiao Yao Palace walked to Han Bowen's side, his face filled with shock. Chapter 58-24. Following Han Bowen's words, everyone's gaze turned towards Di Beichen. They never thought that Di Beichen would have a conflict with the Qingyun sect. Han Bowen, please get this straight. The person who proposed the battle was your eldest senior brother. Later on, the person who changed his mind and proposed a battle to the death was also your eldest senior brother. Now that things have turned out this way, are you blaming us? Bali Yin Che's gaze was cold. He was also amazed by Han Bowen's ability to distort the truth. As long as it was a battle to the death, there was no need to say anything more. Winning was due to one's ability, and losing was due to one's lack of strength. Sure enough, after hearing this explanation, the crowd no longer had any thoughts of asking further. Although they did not know why Qin Hongliang would provoke Di Beichen for no reason. Since he was the one who proposed the battle to the death and had fallen, he could only blame himself for making the wrong judgment. Han Bowen glared at Li Yin Che with resentment. Initially, he had only wanted to deal with Jiang Wenyan. However, this group of people had dragged them into this, and even forced them into this situation. No matter what, he could not let Di Beichen and the others escape unscathed today. A sinister idea formed in Han Bowen's mind. He wanted to pull everyone to his side. Di Beichen and the others have a treasure in their hands. Han Bowen shouted loudly. Previously, Jiang Wenyan and I had discovered a treasure together. However, they had taken it away. My eldest senior brother had wanted to take it back but ended up in this situation. The crowd was not interested in the grudge between the Qingyun sect and the Di family. However, after hearing the word treasure, everyone's eyes brightened. Up until now, everyone's gains in the ancient battlefield were pitifully small. However, everyone understood that the gains from this place must be something extraordinary. Originally, everyone had suspected that Di Beichen and the others had obtained a considerable gain from the bottom of the lake. However, no one had said anything. Naturally, they did not take the initiative to mention this. Now that Han Bowen had pointed out this point, everyone's thoughts became lively. Chen Feng noticed the sinister look in Han Bowen's eyes, and his face sank. Ownerless items have always belonged to whoever obtains them. It's your fault for not being able to obtain them due to your lack of strength. However, Now you intend to borrow everyone's hands to help you take revenge. Aren't you too despicable? Qinfeng's protection caught everyone off guard. As such, everyone was dumbstruck. In the past, he had never seen Qinfeng protecting others. Qinfeng had always thought highly of himself and ignored others. However, his cultivation made everyone have no choice but to take him seriously. Among the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield, there were very few cultivators who had broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm. However, this Qinfeng was truly too freakish. Not only had he broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm, he had even reached the second stage of the Radiant Moon Realm. Among them, none of them were Qinfeng's match. Ever since this guy had made a name for himself, his strength had been crushing everyone. No matter how hard everyone tried to catch up, this guy was still firmly ahead of them. Han Bowen blanked for a moment before his eyes flickered. Even though he was being ignored, he still said unyieldingly, "Qinfeng, aren't you usually quite arrogant? Now you are actually so protective of them. Do you really think that they will share this treasure with you? Stop dreaming." That's right. Gu Wenchang agreed. He was also interested in this treasure. However, their strength alone was not enough. As such, he had to help Han Bowen convince the others. Chapter 58-25. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, if Qinfeng decided to help Di Beichen, they would still have to think twice. After all, this competition did not depend on numbers. As long as Qinfeng, Di Beichen, and the others could suppress the leader, the result would be set. "Qinfeng, we came here together. Why don't you ask Di Beichen to show us the treasure?" Gu Wenchang said. "Or, you can see if he is willing to show it to you. Don't be a fool." Everyone's gaze landed on Qinfeng and Di Beichen. This was a test of the trust between them. However, Qinfeng ignored Gu Wenchang's words. His expression was indifferent, but his voice was firm. "Gu Wenchang, I don't care about these things. He is my brother. What's mine is his. Do you think I would covet these things?" "Ah," Qinfeng sneered disdainfully. His attitude was clear. Not only Qinfeng, but the cultivators of the Great Devil sect were also unmoved. After coming out of the Immortal Cloud's secret domain, they had a good impression of Di Beichen and the others. There were a lot of treasures in this world, but it was impossible to rob someone just because they knew they had a treasure. Seeing that his attempt to sow discord was useless, Gu Wenchang's expression became unsightly. Although this kind of thing happened from time to time, it had never failed. He did not expect to be defeated this time. After seeing that there was no hope, everyone turned their gaze to Nangong Yuqing and Chu Yingming. Everyone was silent, but the atmosphere was somewhat strange. Di Beichen and the others knew that these people were plotting against each other. They were comparing the strength of both sides to see what their chances of victory were. As long as they were sure that their chances of victory were higher, they would definitely make their move. Chu Yingming noticed that everyone was looking at him. He looked at them indifferently and said, "Treasures belong to whoever obtains them. It is only natural." Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang healed his injuries, he had put away his original hatred. If she hadn't saved him, he would be dead by now. It was obvious that the Di family was on the rise. Coupled with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the Saint of the Light, they needed to think twice before making an enemy out of them. Back then, his father had spent so much effort to resolve the grudge between them. He would not stir up this conflict again. Chu Yingming's reaction was clearly outside of everyone's expectations. But like this, everyone had no chance of winning. Han Bowen and Gu Wenchang looked at each other. No one had thought of this situation, but they couldn't think of any other way if they couldn't resolve it at this point. You bunch of idiots. Even at a time like this, you still pretend to be sincere. If he really treated you as friends, he wouldn't have been so secretive and not said anything. Han Bowen couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and sneered. Di Beichen looked at Han Bowen indifferently. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth rose into a devilish smile. "I know that everyone wants to see what we obtained. I can show it to everyone. I can even share it with everyone." Chapter 58-26. It was obvious that everyone was at their wits' end, but Di Beichen was willing to share with everyone. Could it be that he was provoked by Han Bowen and decided to do something so outrageous? Han Bowen was also stunned. For a moment, he wondered if he had heard wrongly. Although he had said so, he knew that no one else would do such a thing. However, Deep Beichun actually had such a plan? Nangong Yuqing was also stunned. He didn't understand what Deep Beichun was thinking. If he had said so earlier, then things wouldn't have become so troublesome. However, Deep Beichun's next words made Han Bowen and the others' faces turn ugly. In just a short moment, their faces turned red, and even their ears turned the color of pig liver. Their expressions were as disgusting as if they had eaten a fly. I'm willing to share it with everyone, but I have a request. They can't see it. Di Beichun used his hand to divide the area into the Nangong family, Blue Cloud sect, and Xiao Yao Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly, and her jet-black eyes couldn't help but smile. Di Beichun wanted to anger Han Bowen and the others to death. As long as we deal with them, I'll take it out. How about it? Di Beichun raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were full of ridicule. Since Han Bowen wanted to make a fuss about it, then he would make Han Bowen speechless. However, on another point, he had to thank Han Bowen. After this incident, his view of the Chu family had changed. Although the grudges between them had been resolved, there were too many situations in this world where people didn't get along. Chu Yingming didn't want to make a move in such a situation, which was enough to show that he had changed his mind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Chu Yingming differently. Turning hostility into friendship wasn't a bad choice. No problem. We also have a problem. Leave it to us. A few groups responded one after another. If it was said that the difficulty of robbing them was too great before, now that Di Beichun was willing to share, the groups they had to deal with were the Blue Cloud sect, Nangong clan, and Xiao Yao Palace. Between the two teams, this request was undoubtedly much simpler. I don't have a problem with that either. Chu Yingming lightly smiled. He wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. However, Di Beichun's move was even more ruthless. Han Bowen was really dumbfounded at this moment. He didn't expect Di Beichun to be so abnormal that he actually came up with such a method. Feeling the dangerous gazes of the crowd on him, his heart could not help but tighten. He could not stop his footsteps from retreating, only wanting to escape as soon as possible. Nangong Yuqing was completely dumbfounded. He regretted it to death. Why did he follow the people of the Blue Cloud sect here? After coming here, not only did he reap all the benefits, but it also deepened the conflict between the two sides. Most importantly, he still had to face the pursuit of everyone. Wasn't this just shooting himself in the foot? He couldn't help but envy Chu Yingming. This guy was truly amazing. He was even able to endure the situation earlier. If he could endure it as well, this wouldn't have happened. Go! Chun Feng shouted coldly. Almost immediately, everyone charged toward Han Bowen's group. Noticing this, Gu Wenchang's group did not dare to hesitate and quickly retreated. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.